Sorry, I'm just stuffing my face real quick. So I was like, I'll just listen.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I usually join meetings muted and I walk away, so I don't assume anybody's there right away. Okay, did I just hit record?
Wait, why do you do that? Is that a nice thing to do? That's
No. I mean, I do it sometimes. Like sometimes I join meetings while like I'm driving or somewhere that I can't talk. Okay, Bismillah. Welcome to another session of Lisān Lab, where we really just hang out. I was just telling Mora this,
Mara.
Mara,
I said
that
that right? And imagine I corrected you and I didn't even say it right.
It's honestly however you want it to be.
No,
I
hey, I hate it when people do this. Mara, please tell us
no.
how. Tell us how it actually the right way.
I mean, you said it, Zinir, kind of like with an Arab accent, but
No, it's
I
Mara.
get.
Okay, I mean, I think yeah, true. Anyway, you tell us, Mara, teach us.
So Zinira, the thing is that Omar, you're like Egyptian, right?
Yeah,
So my name in Egyptian dialect shouldn't be said like my name is usually said for a
yeah. I
reason.
guess I guess we would
Obvious.
say Mara. We would say Mara in Egyptian, but
Yeah.
Zinira is saying Mara or what are you saying? Mara.
No, Mara,
Okay.
you tell us. How do we say it?
It's
Teach
Mara.
us. Okay, that's what I
Okay.
said. I said Mara.
That's
What?
not what
Is
you
it
said.
wrong? Okay,
I
I
mean,
said
it
it with
just
a bit of like a tafkhim on the ra, maybe.
no. I think you just said it with a shorter. I mean, I heard a shorter vowel. Or
No,
no. Okay. Yeah.
no.
Can
Mara,
say
did I say it right? Did I say it right?
yeah, you can call me whatever you like. It's not about
No,
that.
no, we can't. It's your name.
Omar, you were saying okay, so you were saying
Okay, fine.
I mean, it's an interesting point because like the vowel is like I could have sworn the first time you said it, like there was not as long of a vowel as when Mara said it or Mara said it. Now I don't know how to speak. Um, but yeah, I mean like that level of like because we talked last week about how like if you expose infants to different languages at a young age, they become more primed to actually pick up those languages. Their brains actually work a little bit differently than somebody who wasn't exposed to those languages. And then as you grow up, you can, as we speak, as you talk, you can differentiate between very small differences in sound. Like the example we gave last week was like sem, sum, sim. But like vowels are even, like differentiation between like the roundness of one vowel, for example, like to pick up on that, so some people can pick up on that, right? And maybe some languages prime you to that more than others. Um, yeah. So
But I have a question for you before we start. I'm sorry, since we mentioned that you're Masri. Do you also identify, like, do you also feel you're American?
yeah. I mean, Egyptians. I mean, I was born in America, so I feel very
Yeah.
American. Yeah, but I mean, Egyptians are also very westernized, I guess. Or I mean, it's like the Hollywood of the Arab world, or it was at least. So
So you're like, you basically identify as, like, in your heart, you're Egyptian American.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I try. I feel like I relate to a lot of different races. I grew up becoming fascinated with a lot of different cultures, like Japanese culture, and then like uh, Spanish culture when I got a little bit older, and then like Desi culture. Um, so I feel like different parts of me are different things. I don't know, but I think my mind is definitely very very Arab, right? Like that's one thing that I would say. I don't know what part of me is Egyptian really, but yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I was just curious because you, yeah, because you were born in America, but at the same time, you're Egyptian. So I never asked this actually someone before. So, because my cousin was born in Canada, and she's basically Romanian, but I mean, yeah, I didn't ask her this ever. I never thought of asking her this, so I was curious.
I mean, she would say she's Romanian, right? If someone asked her, or she's so American that she wouldn't even.
I think she would say she's both.
Canadian, not American.
Or
Canada
Canadian,
and
rather.
American.
Sorry, yeah.
Grammar, grammar
Someone's
Nazi.
sama is not good today.
No, it's not. It's not. It's more about the vision today. Okay, bismillah. So, yeah, this is the Lisān Lab.
Wait, sorry, hold
where
on.
we
I wanted to
ask
add.
very simple
I mean,
questions. Go ahead.
no, I mean, not. It's not about the story, but I mean, you can finish your intro. But I just wanted to say there were actually more than a few things that I wanted to add last.
Yeah,
Later
same,
recalled.
same.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. Yeah. Please go on with your intro.
Oh, yeah, that's all I was gonna say. Well, I mean, besides the fact that we just ask very simple questions, try and get to the root, no pun intended, of however simple the concept is. So last week we talked about hearing as samia, because of the name as samia. And I mean, if you want to go ahead and start, Zanira, I just had a few things. I think I don't know how we got to the subject exactly last time. I'm trying to think, but we were talking about ruqya. Yeah, okay, that we got to ruqya somehow because of adhan. Yeah, right. Okay. So I remember saying something about how people's immune systems can kind of like boost each other, and I was just kind of speaking purely out of speculation. And I don't know anything. I didn't know anything about the medical science behind it. So I looked it up a little bit, and so antibodies don't transfer like that. So if you get sick and your body develops antibodies, you're not going to transfer that over to somebody else, and that'll help them like heal quicker. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. That doesn't work that way. But what does work is like bacteria, right? So like your gut bacteria, or however, your body has certain good bacteria that help you fight off things, right? And that is something that you can share. So if somebody has like a really good diet, and they're very healthy and they're health conscious and they exercise, whatever it is, and you're in close proximity to that person, you actually could, especially if you're intimate with that person, right? Like if you live with them, or if your spouses or if children or something like that, most likely they'll benefit from your gut bacteria and the general homeostasis of your body. Yeah, that's one thing I think there's something else I wanted to add from last week, but I'm not remembering, or that I can't find the note for. But the general transition that I wanted to kind of bring up again is that like hearing and seeing being paired, that pair, right? So that's a very, I guess, universal pair, you could say, right? It's a very powerful pair, right? We all have hearing and seeing. Allah describes himself in the Quran around 20-something times as being as-Sami' al-Basir, about 30 times as-Sami' al-Alim, right? So 30 times saying, I'm the all-hearing, all-knowledgeable. And I'm not sure if we talked about this when we talked about al-Alim probably like 10 episodes or so ago. But I think the connection there is intuitive, right? Like, well, or it's very related to what we were talking about last week, right? That like hearing is so fundamental. So, it makes a lot of sense that a lot of the knowledge that you get, and I don't think we said this explicitly last week, but like, a lot of the knowledge that you have, like however safe you feel in the current moment right now, right? Your awareness of yourself and your body in space and time in this moment right now, a large part of that is due to your hearing. So that pair is so fundamental, in fact, that not only does Allah call himself by that a number of times in the Quran, but he does also describe human beings that way one time. Obviously the meaning is superlative in reference to God, but God is also highlighting that human beings have very keen senses as well, right? We can differentiate between very slight differences in sound, as we just said right now. Mara, versus mara, which is why I think you said the first time's in here. Um, and excuse me.
The second time is always said in anger. So I've heard the second version plenty of time from my parents, and it was always accompanied by anger. So
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess if you're more angry, if you're more emotional, you're gonna drop vowels a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So the cool thing about the pair, or something that we mentioned last week, is that, like, at least in my opinion, or I think we all agreed, was that, like, hearing, at least sema, right? Because there's different words for hearing, even in English, right? There's difference between, like, hearing and listening. But hearing is maybe more fundamental, right? It's more, I don't want to say simple, but, like, I don't know, maybe there's a better word that someone can help me find, but, like, it's on one end of the spectrum, right? Whereas vision, right, is on the other end. And not just in the, the opposite sense, or the difference between hearing and vision, but vision in a lot of ways, and especially in this concept of basura and basar and basir, right, is a lot more rich, right? It has a lot more variation to it. I think you can kind of say, maybe, whereas opposed to sound has, like, fairly strict framework, or I don't know how to describe it, but, like, not as much variation in sound, right? You can have, the range of frequencies that you can have with sound. Well, we know what they are, right? And we can only hear so much, right? And then even beyond what we can hear, we know what sound waves do. Like the biggest waves, the biggest frequencies are radio waves, for example. They travel very slowly. They're almost like, flat lines, for example, right? Whereas very, very powerful rays, high frequency rays like gamma rays or destructive rays like that, have very, very short wavelengths. Yeah. So that's just that's all I wanted to say, I guess, on transitioning. Just kind of bringing up that idea again of, like, sound being very fundamental to human experience and knowledge also, whereas vision, and we'll get into why, I think, once we look at the root and some other stuff, vision, vision is much more rich and differentiated, and
Or it,
sorry.
hmm.
So did you want to bring anything back up on Samia before we look at the root or something like
Yeah,
that?
so I was saying that, yeah, there's actually so much that we missed the was saying. Um, so when you, like, on your last point about, I mean, if you think about what we're perceiving, what Samar is perceiving versus what Basar is perceiving, I guess it's like sound versus light. But in a way, they're both frequencies. But yeah, I don't know about this whole thing about there's not as much variation, because just now we had like a live example of like you guys both hearing different things when I spoke, right? And so then it's like even there, like we see kind of Allah's name as Samia, because I guess only Allah heard what I actually said, and like the right version, I guess. And then each of us have our own, I don't even know like what, I feel like we hear ourselves less, right? Like when we're speaking. You know how you say in English, do you hear yourself right now? If someone says something ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. So Maham was
but yeah,
saying last time.
I was reminded of the dress. I think we're all old enough to know. The black and white, sorry, blue or black.
Wait, sorry, hold on, Zira. Are you breaking up, or is it my internet?
no, it's also
See
at me. I
differently.
think it's your
We
internet
see color
connection.
differently.
Yeah, it's Zanira. Yeah, we didn't hear anything you said for the past 15
Yeah,
seconds.
yeah.
Just robot voice.
Oh no. Maybe you need to recite yes and you have more. Okay. Is it better? Can you hear me
No,
now?
We heard something. We just, yeah, it was just like, robot-y.
Okay, cool. So I was saying that
Are you using AI to talk?
no, I'm literally just talking on my phone.
I'm
Maybe I
joking.
should. I'm gonna switch off Bluetooth and stuff. It's better.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Never use AirPods if you're being recorded. It's terrible. They're terrible. I don't know if you're
Okay,
using
so
AirPods, but yeah, they're just
it's just a
any kind
random.
of,
But anyway,
yeah.
yeah, just like anywho. So I was saying that when you spoke about, I was saying that when we speak about hearing versus seeing, or when we speak about sama versus basar, we're speaking about sound versus light. I guess that's what those senses are allowing us to perceive. But sound and light are both frequency, right? And then when you spoke about that there's not as much variation in one versus the other, I was reminded of, I mean, first of all, this example that we had live of both of you guys hearing what I said in two different ways. And then Allah is a Samia, so he actually heard what I actually said. And
Mhm.
I was also reminded when you said about that there's not as much variation about the dress that went viral. Like I think we're all old enough to remember it.
Oh,
So
right.
yeah,
The
so
black and gold
was it
one?
blue or yeah, was it
Yeah,
blue or
yeah.
black or is it gold and white? And then
Right.
there was like an audio version of that. There was audio version of the dress, audio version of wait, so basically when it comes to the dress, it's like, showing us that even though like maybe the light is the same, I don't know, is the light the same? But we all have like different photoreceptors or whatever they're called, and we perceive colors differently. And then but then there's also like an audio version, or I don't know if this was like particularly viral. It was not as viral as the dress, but it was like this audio where you could hear Yarel or Fanny. Like it was the same audio, and some people could hear one version and some people could hear the other version. So then apparently there is variation in like both of them. So that's one thing. But I think the most important thing that we forgot to say last time was this, and because it's really linked to like, just like theology. And we've been speaking about it in Fasnul for ages. Yeah, so أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. So this is the ayat of tanzih. So there's like tanzih and tashbih, right? For God, there's transcendence, that God is unlike anything that He's created. And then there's like tashbih, where He's very present and very transcendence versus what's the opposite?
Imminence?
Right, imminent. So He's very present in creation as well. So then this ayah, like we spoke in Tasnuh about like how this ayah has actually both of it, because he's saying laysa kamithlihi shay, which is like tanzih. And then وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. But human beings, we're also like, I mean, not just human beings, many beings have some level of sama' and basar. But then at the same time, it's also like within it, there's like an sort of converse, tashbih and tanzih. So I think this is the way that I understood it, that Dr. Faris explained it. Even within like laysa kamithlihi shay is actually tashbih. Because by saying ka, God is comparing himself to, shay'un. And then by saying Sami al Basir, that is also tanzih, because his hearing is unlike anyone's hearing, and his basar is like unlike anyone's basar. So it's interesting that he chose these two names to assert this, like transcendence and immanence, which is like such an it's a very fundamental question within religions, because to an extent, everything that a religion stands for is determined by how much they believe, like, is the percentage of God's transcendence versus God's immanence. So that's kind of like, really the difference even between monotheistic religions versus polytheistic religions in one way. That's one way to frame it. But yeah, it's so interesting that Allah said these two names as opposed to literally, all the other names. So there's something to reflect there. Then this is also really interesting about like hearing in us, like in human beings. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله ورسوله ولا تولوا عنه وأنتم تسمعون. So, O you who believe, obey Allah and His Prophet and His Messenger,
and don't turn away from them, and you are hearing, and you hear them while you hear them. ولا تكونوا كالذين قالوا سمعنا وهم لا يسمعون. And don't be like those who said, we heard, but they do not hear, and they do not hear. إن شر الدواب عند الله الصم البكم الذين لا يعقلون. Indeed, the worst of creatures, moving creatures, according to Allah, are the deaf and mute, those who do not have, those who do not reason. ولو علم الله فيهم خيرا لأسمعهم ولو أسمعهم لتولوا وهم معرضون. I'm not going to translate that because I don't know how. But it's so interesting that it's coming in the causative form, right? Afala.
Yeah. So
I think it means that
yeah.
if Allah knew that these people that He's calling deaf and mute, that if Allah knew that there was any khair in them, He would have made them hear. And if they did hear, then they would have turned away still. So it's interesting. That's how I understood it. Astaghfirullah if that's not what it means. But it's so interesting because Allah is saying sharad dawab, and dawab means like moving creatures. It means like animals, jinn, and human beings all combined. The worst of all of these, who's the worst? It's deaf and mute, those who do not reason. So it's like, what is so like, and by the way, this is the other thing about like what is real versus what is a metaphor, right? Is it people who are actually deaf who use like we call actually quote unquote deaf?
Yeah.
Obviously not, because Allah created them that way.
Right.
So He's not going to blame someone for doing something, for being created in a way that He created them. And then it's like, is it people that don't speak with their mouth? Bukum is mute, right? People who can't speak.
Some is deaf and Bookman is unable to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. So then even that's so interesting. That means like speaking is also like I'm speaking right now, but I don't know. We don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not mute according to this definition, because this isn't speaking about physical. Again, I can't say physical hearing, physical speech, because let's say real. Okay. Yeah. So we don't know if we're really hearers and really speakers, or we're actually deaf according to this definition. And then Allah says that even if Allah made them hear, they would still have turned away. That's so interesting, subhanallah. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting that there is this asma, the verb la asma'ahum, occurs in the af'ala form. That means Allah causes us to hear. And then even there's two levels of causation. That means actually cause to hear, because I think the way that He's saying, He would have made them hear, but they wouldn't actually have heard, because they would still turn away. So it's not actual hearing. So it's like, I don't know, there's like layers of hearing, even, or like levels of depth of hearing, if I can say that way. And then Allah says in there's another form of this verb, وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْأَعْمَى وَالْبَصِيرُ. The blind and the seeing person are not, like, they cannot be compared, I guess. They're not equal. وَلَا الظُّلُمَاتُ وَلَا النُّورُ. And darkness and light are not equal. وَلَا الظِّلُّ وَلَا الْحُرُورُ. وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْأَحْيَاءُ وَالْأَمْوَاتُ. And the living and the dead are not the same. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُسْمِعُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُسْمِعٍ مَن فِي الْقُبُورِ. Again, I don't know what this means, but it's really interesting. يُسْمِعُ, I don't know if is it a fa'ala form? That He hears or He causes to hear, but yeah, it's Surah Fatir, ayah 22. If we can look that up. But I thought these were so interesting that I think these are very different verb forms to what we've actually seen in any other. Well, maybe alim, because Allahu yu'allimukum, and we know that Allah teaches us, but we don't often think about Allah like makes us hear or causes us to hear.
Yeah. So you're talking about this area here in Allah yasma'u ma yasha wa ma anta bimusmi' man fil qubur. Is that the one you're talking about? On the screen? Yeah.
Can make here.
Yeah. You reminded me these there was a little bit more morphology that that we definitely did not touch on at all. That is interesting. The causative is interesting. We don't have anything like that in English, right? You can't make someone hear. You can't make someone hear something, right? You can't do that. But in Arabic, you can do that.
In Urdu also we can do that, but it actually means like to give them a lecture. Like it has a negative connotation. Like make them hear. That means like tell them off, kind of.
Yeah. So I think the ayah that you read, is this the one?
But yeah, I wanted to say this one as well, that one of the issues with Bani Israel, one of the multiple, numerous, countless issues with their behavior was that they didn't say Sami'ana. And this other thing is that whenever Allah says like Sami'a, like hearing goes together with obeying in the Quran. قالوا سمعنا وأطعنا. They said we hear and we obey. That's what a good Muslim should be like. But yeah, that's what
Hmm.
Allah is saying. That it's like it's not just about hearing. So that's why probably the previous ayah that I quoted, where Allah says if we made them hear, they would still turn away. So that means like they're, they would, even if they had hearing, they wouldn't have the ta'a, they wouldn't have the obedience. So like hearing in and of itself isn't Mara's gonna come at me for my in and of itself. Um
In
so
and of
yeah,
itself.
Gotta love
That's such a debater
English.
thing. This is just such a
English.
debater thing to be like, in and of itself, we do not agree with this principle. But yeah, anyway, so in and of itself, hearing is not apparently enough, because Allah is saying, even if I made them hear, they would still have turned away. So like hearing is wait, even in English we say this, right? Like we imply it when we say listen to me, or like listen to your mom. It actually means obey your mom. It doesn't mean like hear her voice.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's a good
So
point. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like sami'na wa ata'na. It's like it's imply. It's almost like together with it. Like it's almost like if you hear, that means you have to obey it. And I think in one sense that's like a burden that is more on the people that were with the Rasul. Like the people that had a live living prophet amongst them. They had a bigger burden to carry than alhamdulillah us, like when we're, I mean, alhamdulillah, well, okay, but yeah, I mean, like they would get harsher penalties if they didn't obey than people who like were just following the book, and the Rasul is unfortunately not with us. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So yeah, it's like because of this, because I guess they're kind of hearing the actual voice of the prophet, right? Well, we didn't hear like his voice. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So you reminded me of a few forms. One that I wanted to bring up was mustama', right? So you find it in the Quran twice, as you can see here, but colloquially we use, like, to refer to a listener, we actually use the istifal form, right? The mustafil form, which is the form of request, right? So like it's the form of like istighfar. So ghafara is to forgive, istighfara is to ask for forgiveness, samia is to hear, istama is like to try to hear, right? Or to seek to hear, right? So we use that for to refer to like an audience or you know listeners in general. But going back to, like, I guess maybe 10 15 minutes ago when you started speaking, um, I like the challenge. I wasn't articulating as well as I could what I was trying to do with the difference between hearing and seeing. And I think what I was trying to say, or how I would reframe it, is that hearing is more fundamental than vision, right? And I think that's why it comes first in all the collocations. Um, but yeah, hearing being more fundamental, I think, is kind of what I was trying to get at. And maybe even to be more precise, I think when it comes to vision, when it comes to vision, especially in the sense of basar, right? The variation that's possible, the range of variation that's possible, I think, is infinite. Whereas with sound, it's not. It's finite. So I think it's still a very wide range, like you pointed out, with like the vowels um and that sort of thing. Um, but it's not as wide a range as basar, right? Because basar also implies, like, not just like seeing objects and colors and things in front of you, but it implies imagination. It implies
Like wisdom as well, like insight, basira.
Yeah. And I think this also goes to, I think something you were kind of maybe mentioning is that how we use context when we're hearing sometimes. Like sometimes I think you brought up the dress thing, but like the audio version. The reason that we have trouble here picking out the sounds in those like short little like clips, and it sounds like it could be two, well, like usually one of two different things. Usually either that or we just hear gibberish. I think that's usually the case. And the reason that that's the case is because there's no context, right? That like it's just you're just taking one or two words of someone's speech out of context, and you don't have the preceding sounds and the following sounds to help you put that together. But what is it that helps you put that together? That's not hearing anymore, right? That's something else that's happening. And I think basar is actually a part of that, right? Because it's it involves imagination or your ability to see. And then also on fundamental senses, we can also talk about like shu'ur, for example, right? So like um, feeling, is described in the Quran as probably being even more fundamental than sound, than hearing. Comes up a few times in Surah Al-Baqarah, or second surah in the Quran, in regards to like hypocrites, they have no sense, or they don't feel that they're وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, right? So they can't sense or feel what they're doing. Interesting thing about shu'ur, which if you didn't know, I always like bringing it up because it's one of my favorite roots. So the word for feelings is shu'ur. Sha'ura means to feel, but sha'ara, I think, with the fatha on the middle letter, is to write poetry. So shi'r is poetry. Sha'ir is a poet. So I thought that was a cool reality, right? That is captured in Arabic, right? That poetry is necessarily like feelings, right? It has to come from feelings. And interestingly, another derivative that we find from this root is sha'r, which is hair. So I was kind of connected to it because like, hair is kind of like, I don't know, I feel like it's human tentacles in a way. Like, they kind of filter, but also extend our sense of touch, right? Did I have another note on Semia that I forgot?
Did we get into the fact that so we're still on the names, or did we somehow delve into hearing and uh, seeing as knowledge? Because you mentioned something very interesting at the beginning. Or is that like for the latter part of the?
What do you mean again? So we're
Uh,
still
We're talking about everything. Go on, just tell us.
uh,
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
okay. Because I was thinking, because for us, listening, hearing, and seeing doesn't automatically lead to knowledge. It could, but it doesn't necessarily do so in many cases. Like, for example, people who dissociate, or people who, I don't know, know something because they know from, I don't know, from other venues other than like classroom, for example. Like those genius students who don't pay attention to the teacher and don't listen, and I don't know, don't take notes, don't even look at the blackboard, and but they do know the answer, um because they're genius, and I don't know, Allah speaks through them, I guess. um
That's
yeah.
too many. Oh my gosh, sorry.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, because when we started the class, I was thinking, okay, all hearer, all seer. The first thing that comes into my mind, like the most intimate um experience I have that really proves me that he is the overseer or listener is the fact that, for example, if I don't pray something that I wanted to, or like if I don't do something in my own, like I don't mention it, I don't speak it into reality, I don't put it into action, and at the same time, I know he knows. This is like, um, I feel like at his origin, he as the origin of all like the knowledge and the seeing and the hearing, knowledge and perception, sound, motion, movement are mixed up. They're all together because he knows even if I don't speak my mind, but I do speak it in my mind. It's I don't know. Yeah, this is you can choose your weapon. I think I gave like 3 examples.
No, I think you bring up a good point in that knowledge is, I mean, you can have knowledge without hearing and seeing. Um,
Yeah.
but I think also you're pointing out that like God's hearing is not like our hearing, right? That like, like God hears our thoughts, for example, right? And
Yeah.
and he sees our thoughts too. Like if we envision something, right, or like have a dream where you know, um, nobody else could know that or see that except the all-seeing, all hearing.
Yeah, but is it knowledge or is it because when you think of something and it is a very humbling experience, by the way, to think something and to just remind yourself every time that you're not you're not exactly you don't have privacy in terms of you and your relationship with Allah, like you just if you said something and you said I'm not gonna do this, I'm gonna pray this, I'm gonna wish this person well, and you don't do it, um he heard it, but the sound per se is not. How can we say he heard it if there was no sound?
Can I add on this?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, so the first thing that you're talking about, it's literally Allah says this in the Quran. He says, وَلَقَدْ ذَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. That Allah has set for Jahannam many jinn, many of human beings and jinn. They have hearts with which they do not understand, and they have eyes with which they do not see, and they have ears with which they do not hear. They are like cattle. In fact, they are even more misguided. Those are the ghafilun. So they're like unaware. Ghafla is like a really like, something that God is not like. It's heedlessness, usually translated heedlessness, but like more like unawareness. It is kind of in one way, it is the opposite of ilm. So what you were asking, like if it is ilm or not, I think for the opposite of ilm can be jahal as well. Like it could be jahilin, but it can also be ghafilin, like people that are unaware. But what you said
Yeah.
about like blurring intentions, we did speak about this. Something that in Surah Baqarah that really hits me every time I read it is like basically Allah is talking about divorce, and He's saying that when the pronouncement of divorce, there should be 2 times, like it should be a gap in between, and then if they do not want to, like if they have decided, because so that there should be a space for them to come back to return to each other, yet taraja, and to like basically cancel out or annul the divorce, or basically not get divorced. But then he says فإن عزموا الطلاق فإن الله سميع عليم. But if they have had the azam to get divorced, and azam can mean resolve or determination or decision. So if he has decided to get divorced, then Allah is all hearing and all knowing. So
Yeah.
then from that, I understood that actually azam is not, it's not that he says it out loud, but it's a decision on the inside. And then Allah is saying Allah heard that.
Yeah.
And so that is a hearing. And even if you're speaking about intentions, that is a hearing as well. I mean, Allah is hearing that. And those are things that are out in the space. What you spoke about privacy, that's really interesting. One of the things that we're taught in energy healing is to do an energy reading. And I think it involves, that's what I've been thinking as well. Like, it's like kind of like mind reading, right? But like, what is it? Is it because if we say reading, then we're kind of saying basar? Because, reading involves the eyes. And in one way, obviously, and we close our eyes in order to do this reading.
Wow.
But yeah,
Yeah.
to like tune in more, right? But then I feel like sometimes, like for me, it is sometimes a hearing, it is sometimes words, it is sometimes images, again, all with my eyes closed. It is sometimes a feeling, a sensation in my body. And so, like, I don't know what the sensation in my body is. Maybe that's Al Alim, and maybe that's a manifestation of Al Alim. But I do know that these are things that, like you said about privacy, everything can be heard. One of the like first messages that I ever received, like knowings that I ever received in my spiritual journey, was like privacy does not exist. There's no privacy in this universe. It's an impossibility. Like even with Allah, of course, there's no privacy.
Oh,
That is
but
just like common sense.
beautiful thought.
But
There's no
even
price
like,
in the universe. Wow.
yeah, there isn't. And then, but then even if you think about somebody and like, even there, so one of the few things that in the like in theta healing specifically, like I mean, I don't always like, anyway, basically according to the theta healing, like I guess code of ethics, we're not allowed to do a lot of things. We're not allowed to do anything basically without asking the person's consent. So for example, in some ways it goes against like Islamic teaching, because we're not allowed to request healing. We're not allowed to say, God, can you please heal this person from asthma without, unless they say yes. So according to the theta healing code of ethics, you cannot heal other people without their consent. They have to consent. They have the right, almost like they have like the free will to choose to be sick. I know for us, it doesn't make sense because it's like asking somebody to can I make dua for you? Like, we don't really do that. Anyway, one of the things that we are allowed to do without consent, there's only like two things. Actually, I think there's only one thing we're allowed to do without consent, and that is an energy reading, or we call it scanning sometimes. And then again, like, what is scanning? I don't know. Like, is it just anyway? Um, and the reason why is because my teacher said that we always do it anyway. Like, even if you're not trained in
Yeah.
energy healing to read people's minds, someone comes into your space, you have a sense about them. You have like, some people like Omar might call it intuitive. Some people might call it, oh,
That's
I
what
just
I
had a
thought. You
vibe.
know, this is intuition. You read. I'm sorry to interrupt. You read the. Yeah, you read the environment. Basically, that's the
Exactly.
kind of intuition.
Yeah, but people, specifically like people, sometimes you'll just be like, I just had a feeling she was off in some way. But what did you do? You actually scan that person's energy. But you don't, not everybody has that sense. You can train it and get better at it, and then you can actually see beyond, and you can actually read people's intentions like deeper. But then that's one of the things that my teacher said, we're allowed to do it to anybody. Literally, we can scan anybody in this whole world, and like we don't need permission for that um because basically everybody's doing it. And it's almost like impossible to stop doing it, really. But we do it more intentionally, to like, for example, we'll scan like, where is this, for example, asthma coming from, or like, where's the root cause of this specific thing. And then we'll go into like their memories and stuff. That's a very specific trained kind of thing. Again, it's like something called firasa in the tradition. Like, what does it mean to read a person's face, almost like, and then I guess it would be a basar, right? It would be a basar thing, because there is people in the Sufi tradition that would look at a person's face and like basically give you like a horoscope reading kind of thing. So it's like, everybody kind of knows that, oh wait, oh my gosh, there's a hadith about this, that they beware the firasa of the mu'min, because I think he sees with the eye of Allah or something like that. Oh wait, there's the
Yeah.
other hadith that I become his hearing with which I hear, and his seeing with which I see. Oh my god, mashallah. We literally forgot like the most important Sufi stuff. But wait, before we get to that, I have to tell you guys a story. Mara, what you said about dissociating. Subhanallah, this happened to me
No,
like
I
two
don't
days ago.
remember.
So yeah, this like I was at a dhikr, right? And so basically I was like, actually there was so many people, and like I was surrounded by people, and normally I'm really present there, and the reason why I'm really present is because of the sound, because we're singing qasidas, and that's like what anyway. So subhanallah, in that moment I was dissociated, and I didn't even realize it, obviously. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so then, but it was weird for me. Like, I'm saying this because I don't usually do that. But anyway, so I was just dissociated, and it was like a little break in between the qasidas. And so there's these two girls sitting next to me. They're like, I call them my baby friends because they're like my friends, but they're like 11 years old. But anyway, so then um one of them, basically, there's like, a lot of qasidas that we do, and there's some qasidas that, like, my friend, she's like our boss or our leader, but I have to beg her every single time to say, can we sing Salli ya Salam? Because that's like everybody puts in requests like of like what we should sing. And so I'm always like, oh my gosh, can we please sing? It's like one of my favorites. So and we have this book that we read from, okay? And so then I was completely dissociated. I was like absent basically. And then someone said, someone said, let's do Salli ya Salam. And then someone said, what page is it? And I snapped out and I was like, 146. And I was like, and so these two girls next to me, they literally like looked at me and they like burst out laughing because I was like literally like staring into thin air. And as soon as I heard Salli ya Salam, I don't know, like I physically like got pulled back into my body or something. And I was like 146 because that's just like the page number that I remember. And it was so quick. It happened so quick. Like I was like, I'm actually shocked at how quick I came back when I heard that. I feel
You
like that's my safe
that
word now.
you were lacking knowledge and you were like, no, I cannot let this happen. They have to be guided. I cannot.
SubhanAllah, but yeah, maybe the knowledge of that like came to me through the sama. Like the sama came first, because I had to hear them ask the question.
Yeah.
And then but it was crazy because it's like that's something really important to me. Like it's
Yeah.
it's something that I have to make happen every single time that I'm there. But in that moment, like someone they were already like, going to sing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, yay. But then I wasn't even there. So I don't even know how like I'm actually still like trying to process that experience. And now that you brought it up, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Because sometimes you think of what the other example that you gave is such a good example of like if a student is in class and the teacher kind of like almost to like one up the student, they go like, oh, what was I just talking about? Right. And then
Yeah.
the student like gives them the answer and then they're like shocked. But it's kind of the same thing. So yeah, you're right. It's like what is presence? What is hadra?
Yeah, because you
Is it
mentioned very well about that. Was actually I was gonna get there, but you just paved the way beautifully for me. Because I feel that hearing and seeing and knowledge all need to be tied up with awareness. Not the term that has been overly used in the 21st century these days. I think every time I hear awareness, I'm like a bit triggered because of the context that this word is being used in. But like awareness as in I hear you, I pay attention, or I see you, or which leads to knowledge, basically. And this makes the difference between dissociation and actually, digesting, digesting everything into knowledge.
Okay, wow, this is I didn't realize we were going in this direction, but yeah, this is very interesting. I think to kind of sum up what you guys are saying, really what we're talking about is the difference between knowledge and sense, I think. So
Yeah.
what's
but
knowledge?
you have to say that in Arabic. Say it in Arabic. What sense? What do you mean
Uh,
by sense in Arabic?
it would be like ما الفرق بين العلم والحس, right? So like, but I mean, but well, not just hiss, right? Because yeah, sense is hard to translate in Arabic because like you
It could
could
be
just use,
shu'ur as well.
huh?
Shu'ur. Like la yash'urun, what you said, right? Shu'ur. Like I don't know what. Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, but basically like
I think what Mara seems to be implying, and what where I'm kind of leaning as well, is that like hearing is not necessarily knowledge, right? I mean, I think it can be. Same thing with like vision, right? Like you could see something that's not really there, right? And obviously basura can also mean like imagination, and not a regular sense, but it can mean insight. And it doesn't necessarily, I mean, you can't have wrong insight, right? Like either you have insight or you don't. But in terms of like, our basic senses, I think there is an aspect of basic sense. And then this is the other thing I was going to get into is like, the synonyms that we have for seeing. Even in English, right? We can even think about it in English. Because those kind of maybe give us like maybe basar is actually knowledge, but like maybe vision is actually knowledge, but like seeing isn't, right? Like I see there's a lot of things in my periphery and in my vision right now as I'm speaking, right? But I'm not really paying attention to any of that stuff, right? It's just kind of it's just if I need to, if I get really hungry, I can pay attention to the banana on my desk and I can start peeling it, whatever it is. But as I'm talking and looking at the whatever it is on the screen, or just like staring at the ceiling or staring out the window, all these things in my vision, in my periphery, is it actually knowledge? I don't know. And then I think you can make the argument, right? And part of my research is kind of like a theory of knowledge, right? Like what kind of, and the kind of theory that I'm trying to put forward is that knowledge does have a certain kind of structure to it. So in that case, we wouldn't say that hearing is necessarily knowledge. It's not necessarily knowledge. It could be part of the formula, part of the structure, but alone by itself, it isn't. And that made me kind of think of like the way Allah describes Himself as being all hearing, and all seeing, right? Not just all knowing, right? Because He could just say and I know, right? Like in the case of like the divorce, right? And وَإِنْ عَزَمُ الطَّلَاقِ, right? He describes Himself as all hearing, right? He can hear your conviction even if you don't speak it out loud. And that's more intimate. I think it's more like it's a clear effort from Allah. Well, I shouldn't say effort, but clear language from Allah to show His closeness to us. Not just like a omniscient, omnipotent, figure. So yeah, that's an interesting point, right? And I think to get into that more, we can look at the the synonyms that we have for seeing. We looked a little bit at the synonyms that we had for hearing. Actually, I think there's just the one, right? Ansatu, which we should have looked at that root. I've never actually looked at that root before. I don't think there's another root. There's another word synonym that we have, at least in the Quran, for hearing. But for seeing, we have ra'a, right? Even though ra just by itself, just like the raw sound, often I find anyway, it has the sense of like that which is apparent, right? So ra actually means king, in a couple of different languages. I think both Latin and like ancient Egyptian or Coptic or something like that. Or Re is king in Latin. But the raw sound often has this idea of like that which is most apparent, that way you can see, that which is obvious. So ra or ra'a is like the most basic sense of like, and it can also mean like ra'i can also mean like an opinion, right? So obviously an opinion is not knowledge. And then you have like nazar, right, which is an interesting route that we can get into. You get, you can get some interesting ideas from that, like waiting as well. And then basar, right? And then you have basar. I think those are the three that at least are in the Quran. And basar, I guess now at this point we can kind of look at the root, unless anyone has anything else to say about
Yes, I
sound
do.
and
I do. I
hearing.
do.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
So
Uh,
the other thing is about like ears. We didn't speak about fi adhanihim waqara. That there's like, I don't know, like almost like a barrier in the ears. وإذا ذكرت ربك في القرآن وحده ولوا على أدبارهم نفورا. So it's like when Allah um, does his dhikr, then they like turn away and run away almost. But it's the thing about like dhikr, right? And it's like But it's kind of linked to the heart as well. وَجَعَلَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَن يَفْقَهُوهُ وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا. So there's a covering on their heart. I think it means covering. I don't know the exact translation. So they can't understand, and then they don't even want to hear the dhikr. And then there's, I don't know if this is because there is something really, I forgot that there's a surah about najwa, which speaks about, but even here, sorry, I'm all over the place. نحن أعلم بما يستمعون به يستمعون به إذ يستمعون إليك وإذ هم نجوى إذ يقول الظالمون إن تتبعون إلا رجلا مسحورا. I have no idea what that means, but did you say يستمعون was the same as like hearers, like the audience?
Yeah, we
Right?
use,
Like people
yeah,
that are hearing. Okay,
yeah, we
idhum
use,
najwa. This is interesting. Also because like there's something about najwa. I should look it up. But because there are people who like Allah blames for like don't do like whisper around. And but in a specific context. And then there's also I think it's in السمع والبصر كل in السمع والبصر والفؤاد, right?
yeah, I forget which
Mhm.
ayat that is, yeah.
I'm just looking it up. Yeah. So in السمع ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم. So عليم is in here as well. إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا.
Hmm.
I don't know what تقف means, but
What means?
indeed hearing تقف. It's تا قاف فا. لا تقف ما ليس لك به علم. It's 36, Isra 36.
Yeah, the translation just says, "Do not pursue that which you have no knowledge." What
Right. So then that means that we pursue knowledge through the sama and the basar and the fuad. Like I think that's a bit of an implication there, right? And then he's saying, but it's so interesting that these are things that, especially, and I'm literally, I need to like call myself out here first, especially like with social media and like reels and stuff, you can watch so many reels and hear so many people's voices and like so many different frequencies within like, sometimes I feel like it's worse than watching movies like mindlessly because even though like movies have like a lot of people's energies, the people that are acting in them, the people that are crew in them, specifically like when you spoke Omar about like, the frequencies that are within the like music tracks and how they're kind of designed to keep us in certain states or even like cause illness. Even beyond that, like it's just so many people's energies of like watching reels is like one individual is like a 20-second clip, but then there's so much going on and then we just go on and I like it actually it's it's not like overstimulating necessarily in the moment, but afterwards, like living with it, having done it for 2 hours is just, it's too much, especially like when and then like you have to this is like a really good reminder for me because it's like Allah is saying that indeed the hearing and the sight and fu'ad, the activated heart, all of them are going to be questioned. Like you are responsible for all of them and you're going to be questioned about them. And then maybe I should talk about this when we speak about Basir. But yeah, but even what you said about Nazar, it's really interesting because Allah says, انظر كيف ضرب الله الأمثال. Look how Allah like, gives a metaphor or a parable or a simile or an allegory, I guess. But it's like, but you're not actually looking, right? Like it's more like hearing. So in that case, انظر actually means listen. And I feel like even when, okay, this just came to me, subhanAllah, I have goosebumps. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the cave and Jibreel alayhi salam told him, Iqra, and he said, Ma ana biqari. But he wasn't actually saying Iqra as in read. He was actually saying listen. Like because reading is with your eyes, right? But he can't read with his eyes, like in the sense of like reading text, because he's ummi. But then it's like, it was actually like, listen. That's just what I don't know. It just maybe
Well,
that's
it's more recite in that sense.
yeah. But how are you going to recite if you don't hear? That means you have to hear what he's saying. اقرأ
Yeah,
باسم ربك الذي خلق. So then he's going
yeah,
to hear that and then he's going to recite it, right? So it's like actually hear. But
yeah.
when
I
he
mean,
says it, it's like
really, what he's
listen.
saying, really, what he means is, it's kind of interesting because he's using the Quran in a way that to mean something besides what what Jibril meant to say was repeat after me, right? That's what he meant. But all he did was, just recite the Quran, which is kind of like,
No, but I'm saying even Allah is saying, like, this is the word of Allah. When Allah is saying, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and he's saying this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing fully well that that is a person who does not know how to read with his eyes, then he's actually saying, listen to my angel and repeat after him, right?
yeah. I
That's what
mean,
I'm saying.
I think we talked about qara'a before, like that, or like what does it really mean to read? And really, the base meaning is to become pregnant, right? So reading doesn't just mean reading, it doesn't just mean listening, it means internalizing, right? It means like take it in, right? Take it in completely, receive it completely, let it sit with you, become pregnant with it, literally. Even the simpler reading, even qara can mean to come together, right? Because that's what happens in the womb, like, cells start to come together. So that's the most basic meaning, I think. Um, from in the Quran when Allah says iqra. Um, but I was just thinking about how, like, imagine, someone comes up to you and they just kept repeating something to you, right? Like, you know, and at a certain point you might get that just by their tonality and their, intention, you might start to understand that, oh, okay, they want me to repeat after them. I don't know. I was just imagining like a school teacher, right? Like, you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance in America, when you go into the classroom, right? And I'm sure, I remember like a time where like I'm not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, whatever it is, I'm talking to my friend or whatever it is, and then like the teacher will like raise her voice, right, and like repeat the Pledge of Allegiance, right? But what she's really saying is like, shut up and repeat after me, repeat after the phrase.
This is too funny. You know what this reminds me of?
Hmm.
Muslim moms yelling Allahu Akbar in Salah.
Yep, yeah. So
And
this
they
is like,
switch off the gas.
yeah, this is pragmatic 101, right? Balagha
That's so
101, right? You can say, and I had this note written about something that you said a little bit earlier, Zanira, about, I forget exactly what you were saying, but like we say more than what we mean sometimes, right? I think, and that also means that we mean more than what we say. I don't know how to connect that exactly to what you were saying, but I also did just remember the story you were saying about how, like, you were disassociated, but then a sound kind of suddenly pulled you back in, right? So that leads me to that the idea that I was kind of hinting at before, that knowledge has like a certain structure to it. Not even a structure, but like, to me, I think it's like a dynamic, right? It's like a constant, like processing, right? It's a constant kind of like dynamic process, and it allows you to kind of keep things in your periphery, right? So like you have something in your brain, you had something in your brain in that moment that was like, okay, these people are talking about something I don't really care about, so I don't need to pay attention to it. But if anybody mentions anything about this song that I really love, or I don't know, getting food or whatever it is that is on your mind, you program your hearing, or you prime yourself that way, or you make like a subconscious, like, a post-it note in your brain. And that's how knowledge works. Like that knowledge is that kind of like dynamic structure where you can put things in different places and connect them in different ways, a lot like a graph, hence the database, the MindRoots application. Yeah. So and then I think this area that you brought up as well, I think it kind of, alludes to that as well. I don't know if it does, if it definitively tells us that, like, Sam and Basar and Fuad, and your passion, your activated heart, hearing, seeing, and your activated heart. I don't know if that, this ayah tells us, because of the fact that Allah says that these three things will be questioned, right? That they could be wrong, they could be used in some kind of wrong way. I think that sort of points to the fact that they're not knowledge. But I think you could also argue that, we've already established at least that they're part and parcel to knowledge, right? Like you might have some fundamental bits of knowledge, right, that everybody starts off with. That's another idea. But then, how you build knowledge, that involves, a complex interaction of hearing and seeing, and imagination, and and I guess passion too. Like if we think about this ayah in terms of knowledge, does your passion give you knowledge? I think it does, right? Like I think when you're in that, like when you're like in a flow state, for example, right? Like that's the kind of modern vernacular, um, which is kind of maybe the opposite spectrum of like what we're talking about with dissociation. But like, you know, the kind of, if you're talking about like fanat, or like, you know, you're you're locked in, or you're in that kind of flow state. How do you know how are you getting this, like, yeah, you're almost predicting the future in a way, right? Like you're like, you're so locked in, you know how to get the next word that you need, you know how to get the next move that you need, whatever it is. You know, sometimes I just feel like that when I'm driving, like I'm unconscious almost. No, I wouldn't say dissociated, right? I would say like, you know, in a kind of flow state, and that sort of supplements my knowledge in a way, I feel like, right? Or it works with the knowledge architecture in my brain somehow. You know, the passion or that activated heart, the flag feeds into it. I mean, all of it does, right? The sem, the basar, you know, the vision, and then, you know, that activated passion, you know, your love, really. I think that's what's implied here too, right? Like God will question you about your hearing, what the things that you listen to, right? The things that you listen to closely, or, you know, or surrounded yourself by, you know, unconsciously, or without caring too much about, because, you know, it's important that we are put ourselves in, you know, healthy environments. It'll be questioned about your basar, right? Not just what you look at, but the things that you kind of envision, right? Like and I think that's, you know, we'll get into that when we look at the root, but I think an important part of basar, right, is like long-term vision, right? Like what are you aiming at in the long run, right? Not just in the present. And then Fuad, like, what do you love, right? Like, is your love, like, you know, good for you? Are the things that you love, you know, helping you? Are they bringing you closer to who you are, and closer to God? And I think that's, you know, all those things tie into knowledge, but more fundamentally, or more simply, right, we're just talking about, you know, human senses. One other note I had real quick here is about syncopation. I don't know if anybody's heard of this before, but like, and I forget exactly how to define syncopation. I think it's like, it's a musical term that has something to do with like beats and stuff like that. So like asyncopated music is modern music. And when asyncopated music first came out, like when people started like first adding like beats to music, that's basically what asyncopated means. And we should look at the root and find out why. Maybe that'll help me remember. But people would when that kind of music was first introduced to societies at large, people had like very, very violent reactions. Some people like fainted and like threw up, and like, you know, they got like insanely dizzy, or like a lot of people had very bad reactions, which I think speaks to that, you know, idea that we're you know, mentioned in several ways about how fundamental hearing is to our, you know, our disposition, our well-being, our current mood and state. Yeah, I had something else on sama, but anslit is the other word that we find in the Quran for listening, right? And it has the more kind of less primitive, less more complex, more intentional kind of meaning. And actually, I looked at the root really quickly, and the base meaning is actually to be silent. So it's like, it's the kind of listening, you know, that you do when you're silent, right? That's what unslit means, as opposed to like sema, which is, you know, like you know, Zanir mentioned and Maham last week. You know, you can hear things all the time that you're not actually paying attention to or listening to.
I want to speak to syncope because this is actually like a fainting is like it's one of the if it's like a certain kind of fainting, it's actually called vasovagal syncope, and it's this like loss of consciousness because your body is like reacting to some trigger, or there's a drop in blood pressure, decrease in heart rate, and the person like you know, there's like a like kind of loss of blood flow or something, and the person can pass out. There can be like sweating before they pass out, like their vision can go like blurry, which you'll see. and there's ringing in the ear, so that's like tied to like samara. And there's also like in more extreme cases, it also can be like heart arrhythmia, like lead to that. It can lead to seizures, hypertension, that kind of stuff. So it's like it actually is like very like a quite like it can become very intense. And it's both like the body, like if you're kind of becoming epileptic, then vasovagal syncope will increase, or if if you're experiencing syncope, then it can lead to those. So it's like they kind of feed into each other. And you're absolutely right. Like we were talking about tuning last time, like what you become attuned to and everything. And I think the concept of wolves came up before as well. And this time it's like wakara, like, you know, like this covering over like their hearts and over their ears and their eyes and everything. And I think it really is like what the frequencies that we're exposed to, like even in the verse that Zanina brought up, like it's like they're saying that don't pursue what you have no knowledge of. And then it talks about the Samir, Basir, and then the Fuad. And so it's like, I think what you're exposed to also kind of becomes, it tunes you to its own frequency. And so you become like a certain way. And then other frequencies, like when you're kind of enveloped in like a certain kind of like frequency, it almost becomes like a web around you. And then other frequencies can penetrate through that to get to you. And so it's okay, frog. It's like it becomes really, really difficult to like reverse that, because it's also that if you're not aware, then you can't pull yourself out of what you've been exposed to. And the longer that you stay with a certain frequency, it like kind of really rewires you from the inside. And so in that way, like you're experiencing like maybe not biological syncope, like in the thing of like fainting and like physical symptoms, but on a, like an energetic level, you're in a syncopated state because you're out of rhythm with what's like pure and better for you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I messed up actually. The term is syncope, yeah, and not asyncope, just syncope. So like classical music, for example, like isn't really considered syncopated music, but like more modern music, you know, once they started adding like a regular beat that was like heavy, that's what they call music, syncopated music. And when it was first I mean, I think it happened multiple times throughout like the development of music, right? Like, yeah, probably the earliest was like 19th century, you know, when like jazz and like ragtime came out. But I think even before that, like there are like classical musicians that experimented with like regular rhythms and beats, and there are reports of like, you know, people becoming disoriented or you know, I guess you know, in the medical sense, like it just messed with their syncope, I guess. Is that how you would say it, Ilham? Or like
yeah, or it put them in a state of syncope, I guess, because syncope itself is like the thing of like interrupting beats by kind of introducing shorter like beats or kind of displacing certain beats and everything. I think Elvis in the 50s, like he was like the first, like they used him kind of as like he was exposed to that, to like more experimental music, or kind of just like he grew up in areas where he was going to like black churches and stuff like that. Like those were the kind of neighborhoods that his family would live in. So he was exposed to that, but when he tried to bring it into music, both from the way that he experimented, but also the way that kind of the bigger records, like record labels, like took him on and then used that music. Like I think that was the first real large scale demonstration of this kind of concept of syncope, like people like fainting and like especially like women and everything, like having really like exaggerated like reactions and stuff like, and like kind of the phenomenon that became and everything. And then the popularization of that kind of music from that point onwards. There's another thing that I was going to say about this, but I forgot what it was. If I remember, I'll jump back in.
Well, you reminded me of something kind of random about fainting as well that I heard in a book of Sirah. And so I've never actually been able to corroborate it, so I could be wrong, but or it could be like weak or something like that. But apparently, the first time there are some recordings of the first or the few times that the Prophet ﷺ heard music. So one I remember in the biography, I think this is a famous biography of the Prophet ﷺ as well. The first time he heard it, I think it was before prophethood, and he fainted. I think that was that. I think that was in the biography, and then in another hadith or transmission, he's with Enes, and they're like near like a party or like some like passing group of like caravan making music or something like that, and so he plugs his ears. The Prophet plugs his ears, and he asks Enes, but you're gonna listen? Like he says at Asma, like, oh, you want to listen to it? So I think some people use that to like, see, if you want to listen to it, it's fine, but it's not good for you, kind of reasoning. We're not giving fatwas here. I'm just talking about the the power of sound, really.
But for me, what that really shows me is that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is like, after Allah, obviously, the most like
Sensitive.
complete manifestation of that name Samir. So he's hearing a lot of things. And
Yeah.
so for someone who's hearing a lot of things, hearing something like that would have been really loud and overstimulating. I think in
Mhm.
general, it was really, I think he said that if you could see what I can see and hear what I can hear, then you would cry more and laugh less, I believe.
Yeah.
There's a general sense of the hadith. I don't remember the exact words. And so then if imagine, like, even I think he even said that, everybody, when those who are in the graves are tortured, everyone can hear them except the thaqalain. And so it's like, that means I probably hear it too. And then imagine someone like that, like, who can hear like screaming from the graves. And then on top of that, they have to hear music. It's just like too much, right? Okay, so I wrote a lot of things came up for me when you were speaking, Omar. So when you
Mhm.
spoke about like knowledge about structure and the post-it note, and it reminded me of like hearing of like knowing, right? Like this thing that you guys, you and Mara are speaking about, or like whether is hearing really knowing. But I'm thinking about it from even like how we are taught, like say kindergarten, there's this feeling that, or like there's this intuitive knowledge that we learn through hearing things through repetition. And so, not just that, but also hearing things in, like, for example, a certain. So I think there's a sense that the way that we hear something affects how easily we learn it or we absorb it. So for instance, I think poetry, like, or songs even, right? Like there's intonation and like rhymes and things that make it easy for us to keep repeating it. And then that repeating makes it easy for us to learn it. And we use this in like children's poetry. But more importantly, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. We have made the Quran easy to do dhikr of. And then I just want, and even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said he was given the Jawami al Qalam, I was reminded of, because I've been reading Surah Baqarah. There's this hadith about Surah Baqarah. I'm just gonna read it in the translation and then the Arabic. So just so you can hear the difference. um Buraidah reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, learn Surah Al-Baqarah, for adhering to it is blessed, leaving it is sorrow, and the sorcerers cannot defeat it. Okay, that's the English, but here's what he actually said. تعلموا البقرة فإن أخذها بركة وتركها حسرة ولا يستطيعها البطلة. Subhanallah, that's like, he speaks in poetry. And like the whole thing rhymes. But in English, you say there's like no soul to it. And then I realized why. And it's not just this, but primarily these are primary sources of, Islamic knowledge, the Quran and the Hadith. And these are transmitted orally, right? Like for the longest time, they were transmitted orally. And well, not for the longest time, but primarily in the beginning, the Quran was transmitted orally until it, like, they compiled the Mus'haf and stuff, which is not that late. But then there's this, like, knowing, obviously, God knows, and it's like a rahmah from Allah for us, making the words and the sounds easy to hear and to remember, so that it's easy for us to, like, for hufaz to memorize the Quran. And not just hufaz, but also, like, the muhaddithun to, like, hear the hadith and to remember the words, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's words are just as critical to our understanding of our religion as the Quran is. And so, subhanAllah, Allah made, and I think I said there was this reel that I watched about, like, what was it called, Romer? What's the thing? The stylometric analysis, I think it's called. So they do like an analysis to figure out like kind of like the style or the tone, or a kind of like idiolect, even one might say, of an author. And they did a stylometric analysis of the Quran, and they did a stylometric analysis of the Hadith, and they found that these are written. Again, I think the Quran is spoken, but it's also written. I mean, like by God, it's written in a kitab, but they found that these are basically the idiolects of two different individuals. And so it's so beautiful to see that the Quran has a certain beauty that Allah says is not poetry. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has, again, like, but they're very poetic, right? And then right now, like in Yemen, people that learn in Tarim and stuff, there's like schools where Sufi teaching is done. And I met this one woman, well, but yeah, anyway, so she was like telling me that at every level of education, like they have like a whole school, right? Like they have like boarding school for like from, since people are kids to until like she's like college level, I guess. That's not the actual level that they have, but at every level they have poems. Like she's like, there's a poem, I think even you brought up the poem last time, Omar, about like with the different versions of, I think you said it was morphology. Yeah. So she said there's like a poem for fiqh, there's a poem for linguistics, there's a poem for syntax. There's everything is learned through poems. And so it's like, we know what is it about poems? It's a very specific sama. That's what it is, right? Like it's the hearing, the way that you hear it. And so there is a link that people are trying to make. I'm not trying to make, there is a link between hearing and knowing. And the other thing was, subhanAllah, even though I brought up the ayah, but it didn't click to me, but Sama and Basar and Fuad, because I was thinking about like when I was dissociated, I think my hearing was kind of not there because I wasn't hearing, but I think my Fuad was still there. And so when I heard the name of that qasida, that is my favorite qasida, and because I'm passionate about that qasida, my activated Fuad, I think, sort of brought me back, and then my hearing clicked back on, and I was like, oh, here. And so I feel like it's like, someone, I saw this meme yesterday where it was like, sorry, I have selective hearing and you were not selected today. So it's like, sometimes like we hear things that we want to hear and we don't even hear things that we don't want to hear. Like we literally block them out. We actually do that. So yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of fifth grade. I had this teacher, substitute teacher. I don't know. I think it was an English teacher, and he was a motorcycle guy, and he got into a bad accident, so he had to take a leave of absence. And his wife was a substitute teacher, and she was nice, and she came in, and she would always say like, "You guys have selective hearing, and you guys are going to be in for a rude awakening when my husband gets back because he's not as nice as me." Yeah, I don't know why I remembered that suddenly, but
And
you also
in Urdu, we have a saying, like when you want to like ignore somebody, or like if we want to say just disregard that whatever that person is saying, we'll just say like take it in one ear and out the other, as if the space between ears is like free space in there. But yeah, we'll just say like, or we even say suni unsuni karna, which means make the heard unheard. That means
We
like,
also
yeah,
have
just
that.
act like you didn't hear it. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's actually
yeah
really good life advice.
yeah. I mean, in English we say in one ear out the other. I'm sure there's something in Arabic equivalent. I can't think of one right now. Something else that you reminded me of. I'm not sure what you said that reminded me of it, but something that I thought about a while ago, I guess when I used to write more poetry, and it's this idea of like, what is a first love? Like how is your first love different from any other love? And I think that's like, I think now I remember what you were saying. You were saying something about how we learn, how, and especially how like the first time we learn something, how that's really important. So that reminded me of like first love, because I think like your first love is the person that you come to them, or you go to them like kind of innocent, right? Like you don't have any scars from previous loves or anything like that. and so it's kind of like they see the maybe the truest version of you in a sense. But yeah, kind of like me. But that's also a really important point from like a pedagogical, or pedagog. I don't know. I never know how you pronounce that word. From a learning perspective,
Pedagogical.
but I've heard pedagog. I've heard pedagogy too.
Okay.
I don't know.
Just hear yourself say it, and then you tell me which one sounds right.
Yeah,
Let your
pedagogy.
stomach tell you.
I'm just gonna say
I think
learning.
pedagogy
I don't need
sounds.
to. I don't need to sound smart. Yeah, but it's an important point for learning too, right? Because I think a lot of the reason that modern society is the way it is, and attention spans are the way they are, and it is because like the way that we're exposed to things, and the way that we're taught things at a very early age, uh, you know, shapes cultures, right? Shapes, it defines our identity and it shapes us. Unless we become aware of it and then we kind of take control of it, but that's not the case for the majority of people, I think. One of my favorite sheikhs, he would say like, um, in regards to like Arabic, learning Arabic, and he was like, if you talk to people about like grammar, nah, they got flustered, they get annoyed. If you mention sarf, they faint, right? They just like, they can't even handle like what you're moving letters around, you're applying like, wasn't like, what patterns like that. But like, I don't know. I mean, if you, I guess if you have a taste for it, or if you're introduced to it properly, right? And he went on like a whole tangent about how like, that it's the teachers, right, that made like put a distaste in our mouth for learning, right? He blames teachers, he doesn't blame students, which I really appreciate, because I think that's a very crucial and critical point, right? That like that we take, we can only, most people, societies at large at least, can only deal with the cards that are dealt for them, right? So like, if they're dealt crappy cards, um they're not as much to blame, but I mean it's
Really?
not,
I'm
but
sorry.
it's
You
not
said
a
you
it's
like this challenge. Last time I
but
remember you were like all about if you have the free will, you can change the universe. What happened to that? And
no,
now
but
it's like whatever
well,
cards you
I
dealt,
mean,
Did you say
boo-boo.
that?
you're not blameless, you're
I'm
not blameless.
exaggerating.
No, but like, I think the point actually is that there is no point in blaming, really. But you just have to like, you have to correct the false structures, right? You have to correct the structures and the strictures that make people hate learning, right? Like, and that's, you know I guess there's a little bit of angst and frustration from my side still, even from like my early days of school. I never really had a great experience with school. And some people love it, right? Some people love the prison. I feel like some people, or the I mean, at a young age, it definitely feels like a prison, right? But some people really like that. They like the structure. They like the four walls, and like, the very clear metrics, right? College was really refreshing because you didn't have to be anywhere, right? You could skip class all semester and still ace the class if you read the book or whatever, or did whatever you needed to do. But there's still a lot of things that can be fixed and reformed in education, and I think if we think about it like first loves, if we treated education the way we treated marriage in Islam, I think we would be much better off. And yeah, I mean, some schools are more strict about, some universities are more strict about, or some teachers are more strict about attendance in university.
Can you
But
elaborate on that analogy, that if we would treat
Yeah, yeah.
education like we treat marriage in Islam?
yeah, just like, how careful we are in Islam, or how careful we should be in Islam about who we give our heart to, especially in the first, like that's why like it's looked upon, or it's framed so strictly, I think. I mean, I think it is strict, but I think it's framed more strict than it is really, and more dogmatically than it needs to be. But there's a strong emphasis in Islam about the danger of, um, promiscuity, obviously, but also just like, you know, male female interaction, right? Because uh, you can fall in love, and 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 that first time you fall in love could be, devastating for you. It can shape you, and a lot of your future relationships, uh, you know, um, it can have a huge impact on that, right? Especially if you didn't choose properly, or if it was in secret, or if it was, if you didn't have the support of community and friends, and the vetting of community and friends, then that's going to, inform the rest of your relationship. You're going to be, however that relationship ends, maybe you get lucky, and your first love is your only love. Um, but you can apply everything that I'm saying to education as well, right? Because like if your first experiences in school sucked, and drained you, and misled you, and eh, eh, didn't treat you well, you're not going to have a great relationship with learning, as you progress, unless you come to terms with that, with that reality, right? And I think that's, not to get too um, the off tangent, I guess, and talk about relationships and stuff like that. But I think, in my experience, a lot of times when people get into relationships, romantic relationships that don't end well, they don't learn from them, right? And they just kind of like try to erase the past and forget it happened, and then they just end up in the same relationship again with a different person. And that's also, I think, parallels the learning experience, right, of many people, right? It's like first time they were taught math, or Shakespeare or something, they were shamed and punished, and made to feel bad for not caring, or it being presented in a crappy way, and not being interested in it. And then going forward the rest of your life, you hate Shakespeare, or you just you suck at math, or you don't care, you always you don't want to do math in your head, or whatever it is.
It's so interesting because I actually uh, I think it's the opposite. I think they're like the two examples that you gave, I feel like they're at opposite spectrums. Um yeah, and I just think
No,
it's
no,
interesting.
yeah, no. So you can't just leave it there. Well, are you gonna elaborate?
No. No, but I do want to say that it's refreshing to hear it like how you framed it, because I'm also interested in reframing my own point of view. But so because you gave these examples, you have a bad experience with learning at a young age, and then you end up somehow resenting the idea of learning or the process, or as you uh, said, mm, math. You don't like math in the beginning, you end up hating math. But I actually think that, yeah, in education, when it comes to education, first experience uh while you are young is something, but then education is one of those things that you later pick up on in life as a choice to see differently, much easier. For example, because you have, I just think that it's one of those things in life that you have another perspective on, um whilst when it comes to romance, I feel that uh, what actually encourages marriage, and what's really about marriage that makes romance a successful story as an adult, is the fact that you kind of you are kind of not forced, but let's just say encouraged by circumstances. Circumstances meaning age, reproductive ability.
That's a little personal.
Uh, We're adults, it's fine. I don't know, yeah, religion, family, upbringing, the need to share rent, so because the way I see it, romance is something that we as humans could indefinitely experience on a loop, unless, and I hate it, trust me, I hate it, I hate that I have this perspective, but I I actually think there's something to it, and it's actually the circumstances that somehow wrap it up and say, this needs to grow on you, or you need to have it differently, while I feel like education is more of a personal choice to reframe it in yourself, probably because love also is very tied up with trauma, and as you said, heartbreak, and the fact that you are absolutely a fool when love is on the table, so um it's not necessarily like, sometimes it is a choice, it becomes a choice because of these circumstances, but more often than not it's something that creeps up on you, while yeah, while the decision to look at mathematics differently than you did at 17 is, it can also be shaped by circumstances. Like me, for example, I have to, rebuild my relationship with mathematics because AI. uh, but um yeah, I feel like it's different, I don't experience it, I don't look at it the way I did at 16, when my teacher, may Allah bless you, so was like, you were not made for this, who says that now, I have to be made for it. I have to I have to give it a try. I have other resources now to try it, that makes
Uh,
sense.
okay, hold on.
Oh my gosh,
This,
I'm dying. That's too funny. Sorry.
this is good. No, this is good. I don't know if we necessarily disagree, but I think I can better articulate what I was trying to say. And I remember the line. So it was a line in a poem that I wrote a long time ago. I'll try to find the whole poem, but the line was, "What else is a first love, but who you shared it all with?" So that's kind of where I was coming from. It's like the first person that you fall in love with is the person that you just give everything to, right? You just give them all of yourself to. um, and then for most people, I think, and not,
Allegedly only the first. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, not
hold on,
necessarily.
hold
I
on,
don't
hold on,
think
hold on,
so.
hold on. Let me finish. Uh, that's, I think, the general case. All right, I think that's the general case for most people. Is like the first one
No,
is
it's
like,
not. Did you do a referendum? How do you even know this? That's such a
this is,
generalization. That's an over generalization.
yeah, it is a generalization, but hold on. So like, I think that's the general case for most people. And then what happens is the very next time you love, right? You just, I don't even think it's not a conscious thing. You're not going to give as much, right? You're going to give just maybe like maybe just a little bit less of yourself, or show or share. The word that I use in the poem, and I felt, you know, uh, is important. It's like, it's the first love is the one that you shared everything with. And then I feel like in some way you fundamentally can't really do that with anybody else, right? Like it's just, and that's the same thing that happens with learning, right? It's like the first time that you're exposed to something, right? That's the first time that you kind of give it everything, right? Because you're just new, you're just fresh, you're just kind of like, I don't know. It's like I'm imagining like the first time a seed breaks through the ground. But uh, um, but
That's interesting. Yeah, how what you said. Because on the mathematics, like in comparison, first time you get in touch with mathematics, if you are asked a question, you're not like, oh, I know the answer. You actually open up and you're more present as you learn.
Yeah. Okay. So then the other point to get to, what everybody else is, the contention everyone, I think, has, and I think that's like, I'm talking generally. I'm speaking generally, right? Because I'm obviously an exception here. I grew up. I hated school. I had bad experience in school. I never really put a lot of my effort in it. But here I am trying to revolutionize and like change paradigms of teaching and learning. So and I think that does happen often, but I don't think it's the general case. I think some people, like the example I always think of is one of my favorite bands growing up, Third Eye Blind. The English teacher told him when he was growing up, well, you'll never amount to anything. But he's one of my favorite lyricists. So that kind of like, and that happens in romantic relationships too, I think, right? And maybe romantic isn't the best word, because if you get into psychology, a lot of like our relationship with our parents influences our choice of partners, right? Like a lot of times you choose somebody that's a lot like your parent, one of your parents, and sometimes you choose something that's the exact opposite, right, of your parent. And I think that's the more general case, right? Is that you choose someone. That's complicated. I don't want to get into parents and stuff like that. That'll take forever. But I think with learning, there's a close parallel. I'm not going to say it's 1-to-1. I've been challenged enough to, and I think I'm also the exception. I would say romantically, I'm also that kind of exception, right? Is that like, and maybe you can relate to this, and that you don't learn, right? You don't learn from your mistakes, and you give too much. Every relationship.
Oh, nobody, you're married. I can't relate to anything.
That's too funny. You're the exception there too.
Yeah, you're the exception.
Well, I mean,
I'm so confused right now. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's because I'm overheating, like, or what, but I'm just not being able to follow, like, the whole thing between education and like love and everything. Like, can you like say your kind of thesis again, like slowly?
I mean,
Wait, sorry, before you do that, Omar, can I just bring this to Basar from the Quran, and then you can actually explain, because even I'm like, I mean, I'm kind of getting it. But basically, okay, so you know how you spoke about love at first sight, right? Like, no, I mean, you didn't speak about that. You spoke about first love and like kind of implied like there's like a first hate. But I'm thinking about, and I kind of agree with the part about education, because it's, if there's like a love at first sight, I think in education it's a hate at first hearing. Like the first time you hear about some things, you just like, no, that's a no for me, like maths. But then, my friend, a lot of my friends who are married, they be having babies. So they come to me and they're like, give us names. And then I give them names. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I can't name my baby that because I knew a person like that and she was horrible. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, so it's like this thing, like we associate, like, I guess it's like a first association, right? Like with the names that they have, even though that name is like, I don't know, it's literally, I guess most names are neutral, I would say maybe. Not really, obviously not the names of Allah, but like there is a certain energy to the name, but then there's like I guess what you're talking about is like just association, right? Like it's just like the first primordial, not prim, the first association that we make with anything. And if like my first association with math is trauma, then I'm not going to do that. If my first association with driving is my daddy yelling at me while I'm driving, then it's like, it comes up every single time. And then the same thing is like, and I totally get it, like with love, it is the same way that, I mean, there's so much research about this, that the way that our parents loved us or that they were attached to us is how we attach to others in our relationships. But I think if you're saying that we have a choice about learning, or like Mara is saying, then we have a choice about both. Like it can't be either or. Like, if I can choose to look at maths differently in university, or even if I can go to university, like you said, in school, I also did well. Sometimes I was like top of the class, but then there are times that I failed, and I'm not failed, but I didn't get like passed. I got promoted. And now people would like look at my like educational record in university and be like, no way that you didn't do this in school. And like I've been to, or almost been to, some of the best universities in the world. Alhamdulillah. I'm just exaggerating. But yeah, no, some people are like, oh, like you got into, this university and then you failed like this at school. But that means there was a choice that was made to not keep that association going, right? Or to change something. And I think this speaks to what you were speaking about last time, is like, actually, we don't have to keep going with the cards that we were dealt. And that goes for everything. If we can do that with mathematics, because if our perception, like Mara is saying, like, I'm just going to change my perception, because she's almost like saying, I don't have any other choice but to be good at maths. I'm not going to care about what Amo in first grade said. Then I can also take that vision and that like burning fire to my other relationships, to marriage, and be like, actually, no, I'm going to looking back at maybe my own personal history, but maybe I think so more at societal like trends of marriage and the way that, for example, we've seen that people treat marriage. Then I can say, no, I'm not going to stand for that. And then that
Yeah.
means I'm almost like forced to, I am going to, and I will, and I have to almost um not put up with this. So I'm gonna have to change something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like my attachment style. Maybe it is, just maybe opening up our views on how we view the other opposite gender, which again will be tainted by whatever happened in our childhood and our parents and our, not just parents, again, maybe it could be the first love, maybe it could be our whoever we were around, extended family. But I feel like if there's a choice, then there's a choice both ways, and you can't be like, oh, there's a choice. I feel like both of you guys are saying there's a choice in this, but not in that. But I feel like you have to be kind of, I think you can extend it to the thing. And but I don't agree with what you said, Omar, about like the first love being like the first time that you give it all, because I think you don't even know, like even just from like time, or I mean,
Shared.
maybe I am making an assumption here that the more you live, the more you know yourself. That's not true for most people, because a lot of people get older and then they get less wise. Like older, age does not correlate with wisdom. But if, like, just for the sake of argument, if we assume that we do, that we slightly maybe know ourselves better each year, then we can say that you didn't even know yourself that
Sorry to
first
interrupt.
time.
I think he meant it like being reluctant. Like
Right. But
reluctant
then maybe you
and
healed after that. Maybe like you heal after that, and then like maybe this is what I see in like people that come to
inshallah.
me, like clients and such stuff. Is like trauma a lot of times is, and this is the issue with us human beings. We actually refuse to change. Many of us, like I don't know, it's something about like about our wiring or whatever, or nature. But many of us, we refuse to change unless there's like something really bad happens. Like we need to be pushed almost to change. And then of course I feel like the majority of us, like, carry on the victim perpetrator, like the cycle continues. I think the majority of times, unfortunately, astaghfirullah. But at the same time, that is the thing that can be like the pushing, like, the catalyst for someone to say, actually, no, I'm not gonna get hurt next time. I'm gonna look within and see what caused this issue last time, so that I don't have to. What lesson can I learn from last time? And then,
Is
and
that not what
every
everyone
single
is
like,
doing?
but that's the thing. I feel like we kind of have like an echo chamber where, like, at least in my circles, where, like, it's like, oh, healing, like this is the whole thing now, right? Like this is what you're supposed to do. But then I don't know that everybody's doing that. But I feel like that's like a bubble that maybe we're in. But
I feel
yeah,
like that's
I saw this
reflective of.
meme.
Sorry, Kosi.
There was this meme where it was like, if you knew me a few years ago, you didn't even know me. The writing team wasn't that great. We were understaffed. You need to get to know me again. So then, in that sense, if we look at like our life is like a progressive trajectory, then maybe your last love is going to be the best, and because that's when you know yourself most, and maybe that's the one that you give your all to, because you want it to be the last one, and you don't want to be. But I understand what you're saying, Omar. Like, every single time that there's a heartbreak, I think we kind of like retreat a little bit into ourselves, and like we place a layer of blocks around our heart. Like, this is something that I've seen like time and time again. Like, everybody does this. We close a little bit of ourselves every single time that
Yeah.
we get hurt. And then, but the issue is not that. I feel like that's almost like an instinctive response. Like, it's a, what's it called, defensive mechanism. But then
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
like the question is, are you going to open your heart back up again? But the thing is, the next time you open it up, it's going to be more open, but then there's going to be more, which means you're going to have space for more love, but at the same time you're going to have space for more, like, the likelihood of more hurt as well. To bring it back to basar, and you said who we give our heart to, like why in Islam it's really like emphasized to be careful. And I feel like who we give our heart to in some ways is who we give our gaze to. And that is why in Surah An-Nur, Allah says, قل للمؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لكم. Sorry. استغفر الله. ذلك أزكى لهم إن الله خبير بما يصنعون. Tell the believing men to reduce or to lower some of their gaze and to protect their sexuality that is pure for them. Indeed, Allah is aware of what they are constructing. That's really interesting. Yasna'un. And then he says, tell the believing women to lower some of their gaze and to protect their sexuality and to not show their ornamentation or their zina except for what appears ordinarily thereof, and to throw their headscarves over their chests. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ, and do not show their beauty except to their husbands or to their etc., the whole list of people. And for me, obviously, there's like two things here. The first, the primary thing is that you need to lower your gaze, and like lowering your gaze and guarding your sexuality is linked. And this is linked to purity. And so it's so interesting. Allah says, Khabirun bima yasna'un. Yasna, I think sana is it's like a kind of progressive creation, right? I don't think it's like nasha or dhara. I think dhara is creation. But it's definitely not like bada, like badia. And it's definitely not like mubdi, right? It's like a process. It's like manufacturing, right? Like there's it's a whole I think manufacture is what we have. Sanai, we have industrial manufacturing where there's stages of production. That is what it is, and what sana is. And it's what happens from that takes a person from looking at somebody to committing zina. That's, I think, sana, the in between of that. In English, there's some when I used to watch a lot of English movies when I was young, and people would say whenever someone is caught cheating with someone else, they would say, well, sometimes they'd say it just happened, which I don't know. But anyway, sometimes they'll be one thing led to another, right? And
Yeah.
so this about what is the one thing that is leading to another? The first thing is the gaze. And so that's why Allah is saying, in Islam, we have something called sadda dhara'ya. That means cutting off the dhari'a. So some things, they're not haram in and of themselves, but they become haram because of what they can lead to. And so this is where gender interaction becomes is a thing, right? That's where we need to be careful. What can this lead to? In and of itself, sitting in a room with somebody may not, it is kind of in khalwa, it is wrong. But then it's maybe speaking isn't in and of itself wrong. But then it depends on your intonation, this and that. What can that lead to? If that can lead to something, then that also becomes haram, even though in and of itself it's not haram. And then it's so interesting for me because men are the active principle and women are the or femininity. Actually, yeah, men are the embodiment of the active principle and women are the embodiment of the passive principle. And for me, in this ayah, even though Allah, this is the manifestation of that in the name of Allah, Al-Basir, right? So Allah says to the men first, mu'minin, the believing men, lower your gaze and guard your private parts. Then he says to the women, lower your gaze, guard your private parts, guard your sexuality, and do not show your beauty. Not beauty, but your, the stuff that we put on top to make ourselves beautified, I guess. Yeah. So that's interesting because I think because women are the passive principle, men being the active principle of Basir means that men like to look, to see. And women like to be looked at, to be seen, to be perceived, to receive attention. So that's, those are our tests. The man's test is stronger in that can he lower his gaze or can he restrain his attention? Whereas the woman, our test is more can we live with less? Because it's attention that fuels us. Whereas for men, I think when they look at a woman, that also it is a kind of receiving of a feminine energy that kind of fuels them. Again, Allah is saying that you shouldn't do that with just anybody. But yeah, for me, it's that. It's that's why it's not such a test for. It doesn't say for men don't show your beauty, because maybe there's less of an instinctive inclination to be looked at or to be the object of the gaze. Whereas for women, we want to be looked at, not just by men, right? We want to be looked at. And we want our beauty to be looked at, but not just that, but we want to be seen and perceived. And so then obviously also in terms of physical beauty. And so it's this thing about Basir. And even I think even with Samia, I think that also reflects, because for me, at least as a woman, I think obviously all women are different, but I want to be heard more than I want to hear. Like I don't want to hear a man's like telling me whatever. I don't want to know it's but like it's more important to me that I am heard, right? Like I want to be the talker. And but that is, it sounds like it's the active principle, but it's actually the passive principle in me, like being like I want to be the object of hearing.
But
You
what
hear
if
me,
it's a test? What
you
if
listen to
it's true?
me.
What if it's a
Yeah, it
test?
is. I'm not saying it's not a test, Mara, but I'm just saying that like that, that's just, yeah, but I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Well, hold on. Let's go back a little bit, right? Before we get to Ghad al-Basar, right? Because that's an interesting topic, and you brought up some interesting points that I didn't quite understand. But let's just go back to what Maham was saying. I think I can simplify it really simply. So I put this ayah back up here. All I'm really saying is that if we were as careful, as we should be with our hearts, with our minds, learning will be a lot more. Education in general would be much easier to reform. Would need reform. It would be a lot better, right? That's what I think. Like, be careful who you give your heart to, but also be careful who you give your mind to. That's all I'm saying in like the simplest sense. And it's true, I think, what you were saying, Zanira, that we always have a choice. But I think even though, even in like my case, where you might consider me an exception to a degree, I think I only have a choice up to like a point, right? Like up to like a certain level. Like I just can't open up, like an innocent child that has never, loved before or has never learned before, right? Like you just can't do that. Like you're past what you understand at a certain point. It's probably imperceptible. It's probably beyond your level of conscious, right? Especially if you're making the active choice. Like if you become aware of your trauma and then you're trying to move away from it, right? um, I think for most people that it's imperceptible how their traumas affect them. But if you are aware of them, there's still going to be aspects of it. I think like you're never going to be completely healed, are you? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean that's kind of how I think of it. Another way I think I can kind of simplify is if we go back to the conversation we had last week about puppies. Think of like how we said sum' and sim', right? Sim' is the puppy, right? And then I brought the example of that poet that says, uh, I'm like a puppy's heart, right? Like my head's on a swivel, right? Like I'm very aware of my surroundings. And you can imagine like a puppy, if you've ever been around a puppy or a young animal, right? They're very sensitive to sound. And the slightest thing will like they'll quickly turn their head or they'll adjust their ears or whatever it is to get more information. That's what I think is kind of similar, right? Because as that puppy grows up, he's not going to be as reactive. He's going to be like, okay, I know that's just the wind. That's just like some rustling. That's just whatever it is, right? That's just, whatever. I was going to say something I probably shouldn't say, but like in romantic relationships, I think the same thing inevitably is going to be happening, no matter how self-aware you are. I think if you're not, if you get hurt, like even not in romantic relationships, right? Like imagine you're like a really good driver and you get in a bad accident, right? You might be able to get right behind the wheel, and be a perfectly normal driver. But I think there still might be some like, something that's like some fear that will change you a little bit. That's all I'm really kind of trying to say. I think it's definitely an oversimplification. But
I agree.
yeah, yeah, and then like in terms of like, it not only is it an oversimplification, but I'm speaking in very general terms, and there's always exceptions to the rule. But general theories help us, refine like special theories, right? Like we can understand the general case by looking at special cases, and also the other way around.
And what can I add something?
Yeah.
It is that's what I've been trying somehow to say, that I feel that later on the circumstances force us to revisit that fear and try to at least, I don't know, override it in some way. And both when it comes to education and profession and qualifications, both when it comes to marriage, obviously there are nuances and the experience is different, but the baseline is that we do have a fear of, I don't know, not being enough, not being whatever, yada yada yada. And it's, in terms of marriage, is the circumstance of everything I mentioned, and in terms of education is the, I do feel somehow though that there is a difference that I was saying at first, which is when it comes to education, maybe it's just me, but I feel that the override can be more intrinsically compared to, for example, the emotional decisions we make, the emotional life, the marriage, because
Wait, say that again. What do you mean by intrinsic?
what I mean by intrinsic is that I guess because I have in mind, for example, what would be the fog? What would the fog would be made of? For example, the fog meaning the fear. The fog is meant to cover the fear. So the fog would be made out of ego, emotion, unprocessed experiences, and desire, wish, aspiration. So it works in both instances of life, profession and personal life. But I feel that the fog can be less critical when it comes to profession, because I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like it can be,
Okay, I
like
see what you're saying. Yeah.
I can override my fear of being bad at math from within, because so my script is like this: I don't have to be the best at math. I don't have to be Einstein. I just have to
Mhm.
understand two equations, and I'm so much better than I ever thought I would be, and I'm so much better than high school. But when it comes to love or marriage, you want to be the best. Like the stakes are so incredibly high, because it's the whole I choose only one person and whatever. So I feel that it's less intrinsically, the overriding of the fear is less coming from within, with ease. And I put emphasis on with ease, then just getting your head out of your back, and just, I don't know, learn one equation, or learn how to learn a new skill for your job so you can pay bills.
But I feel
Yeah,
like,
that's
Mara, it depends on like what you think of is intrinsic to you. In some societies, like my not alhamdulillah, not specifically like my family, but in India, a lot of people, for them, how good you are as a student is like your entire worth. How good do you do in school, how well your job pays, this is your entire worth as a human being. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. There are people who, in India, a lot of students commit suicide depending on their 10th or 12th grade results, because this is what their entire life almost leads up to. It's like getting into specific colleges, so it's like this thing about who we, I think it goes back to like who we think we really are, or like where we derive our worth from. And so, depending on, I don't know, maybe circumstances, I don't like to put circumstances above us. And I don't know why Omar is doing that today, because last week he was all like, I really believe with the willpower,
I'm
we can
sorry,
do
but the
literally.
circumstances are so important. They're like crucial.
Yeah, but you're God's manifestation in a human being.
Yeah, and
And
so are
circumstances are
circumstances.
passing. No, circumstances are like things that are there. Allah says about this dunya, that this hayat dunya is it's a mata' al-ghurur, it's the enjoyment of delusion. So even if there are circumstances that are good, they're delusion. And so people who like understand that, in Urdu, there's this really beautiful like shi'r, we say, like it's like it says हालात के कदमों पे कलंदर नहीं गिरता टूटे भी जो तारा तो ज़मीं पर नहीं गिरता गिरते हैं समंदर में बड़े शौक से दरिया लेकिन किसी दरिया में समंदर नहीं गिरता, which means that halat in, like, it means like circumstances. I think in Arabic you would say muhdathat, that the calendar or the Sufi does not fall at the feet of circumstances, because stars don't fall on the earth. And rivers don't fall in this rivers readily fall into the sea, but the sea does not fall into a river. So you have to always, like, make yourself bigger, or like see yourself as bigger than the circumstances, because you are. And it's because they're passing. And there's so many hadith, like, knowings about this. Like Ali radiallahu anhu said that we're going to wake up from that people are asleep, and then when they die they wake up. So this life is actually a dream in a way. And we don't, like, how seriously we take, for example, education versus marriage. It might be a reflection of, I don't know, any number of things that people told you. Like in India also, if for a woman, how well she does as a wife is also a reflection of her entire worth. How round your roti is, like how, I don't know if you guys know what a roti is. I mean, Omar probably knows. But yeah, Mara, it's just like a bread that you have to make it round, but it's a flat bread. But anyway, how well you can make that is a reflection of how marriageable you are, and how marriageable you are as a woman is a reflection of your entire worth. So then, but the question is, are you going to accept that narrative? Are you going to accept that, oh yeah, this is my entire worth? But what did God make me for? Did he make me to have a good grade? Didn't he make me to go to, like, Ivy League? Did he make me to make what's it
Yeah,
called?
no,
To
that's
make
interesting.
shareholder profit, to increase shareholder profit? Is that what God made you for? No. Or like, but yeah, it's like, but I think in other terms, to speak about in terms of names, right? It's like, maybe for somebody for whom education is really important. Like for me, I don't tie my entire worth to education. So I literally don't have, like, if somebody even were to call me dumb, like, I'm like, okay, great, I'll just go sleep at night very peacefully, right? But there are people for whom it would ruin their, like, being, like, their view of themselves,
Yeah,
if
that's
someone
what I'm
says that,
saying. This is the fog. Yeah. Like basically, yeah, the tying with the identity, self-identification is basically what enhances the fog that I've been saying, because for some people it could be one, for other people it could be another. And I feel like in this life we just continuously have to uh, uh, bye Maham. Not like stop this identification with one or the other, or just, I don't know, find a balance between these.
But I think it also goes back to, like, the names of Allah, because, like, which one, maybe someone is really emotional about how well they do in school, because maybe they have an inner knowing that they're meant to manifest the name of Allah, Al-Alim, more than someone who has more of wadud in them. And for them, marriage is really important, and that's really linked to their, like, self-worth, and even maybe their self-actualization. And so for some people, like, just being a housewife, just quote unquote, it's not just being a housewife, being married, having a happily married, like, a harmonious life, that might be like their highest purpose. And that actually might, I mean, like, that might be their highest purpose, as in that's how they see their highest purpose. But that might also existentially, like, ontologically, maybe that is the purpose that God has for them. But I feel like at any point we need to, like, separate our self-worth from the thing itself. And unless it's, like, linked to the names, unless we link it to the names and say, this is why it's my purpose, is because I want to manifest this name of God, then it's like, okay, because then, you're not putting it outside of yourself in terms of, like, validation from society, which is what most of us, like, we do that, right? Because we're social creatures. It's not inherently a problematic thing in and of itself. It's not problematic. But it
No,
can
it's very
become problem, yeah, but it can become problematic. So yeah, I don't know, like, I feel like, and whatever your main thing is, then that is your test. Like, if that is your thing, that if education is more important to you than marriage, then the education is going to be a bigger test for you. And then that's where, but then if that's the other thing, so it's just like, which one is more important to you? But I feel like we shouldn't make the main issue is that we start to identify with things instead of with God, or
What do
like
you
with
mean by test?
situations.
What do you mean by test? We just started this meeting saying that school and tests are. So what do you mean by test? Because I might get. I have to. I think I'll fail it. I. No,
Oh,
really.
I
What do
mean,
you
like
mean by
God's test. So, for example, Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? His name means the one who is the father of many nations, almost, like, I think something like that it translates to. Okay. So then Ibrahim, this is his name. And in the Prophet's names, not everybody is true to their name. But the prophets, I think they are not more or less. I think they are true to their names. And I think people who are like, yeah, maybe the awliya, they're also true to their names. But he is a true manifestation of this name, in my opinion, because the first thing, well, like when I read Surah Baqarah, and Allah says to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Inni ja'aluka linnasi imama, I'm making you an imam, a leader for people. The first thing he says is, I mean, according to the Quran, is Qala wa min dhurriyati, and what about my descendants? What about my children? What about my people to come? He didn't even say anything about himself. Like, God's saying, I'm making you an imam or like a leader for everybody. And his first instinct is to think about his children. And so it's like, that's because he's a manifestation of his name, of like, he's a very father paternal energy. And so what is his test? That is his test. What does Allah ask him to do? Sacrifice his son. So that is the test. That is literally like, for him, it's an extreme test where he has to like, slaughter his son. So then that's what I'm saying. It could be a test that is like a difficult test. In that case, it's a difficult test. But it could be an easy test too, because I think just because something looks like it's really easy for you doesn't mean it's not a test. We're tested with both ease and difficulty. And so that's what I'm saying. Like if that's for him, like being a father was like the main thing. And he is the father of like, he's even called like the father Abrahamic he's the father of the Abrahamic religions. And it's in his name. And so it's like, I think for Sulaiman alayhi salam, his test is his kingdom is his test. And so he's like really rich, but it's an easy test, right? It looks like a better test than Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's a test of definitely more ease, but it's still a test. So it's like, I guess what I mean by test is, do we obey Allah in that thing? And like, if it's difficulty, do we like persevere with sabr? And if it's ease, then are we grateful? I think that's what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. Can I end with a joke? So,
There's no ending here. We never end.
because I know,
That's her defense mechanism. Let her live. Okay,
put
go ahead.
put a mic drop to this beautiful speech Zinira gave. So I have another name, which is Cornelia, which is the name of the first.
Flower?
What?
Oh, I thought it was a flower, but no.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll go with that. So Cornelia is the the mother of the Gracchi brothers, which are the founders of ancient Rome. And she's also the symbol of bad motherhood because she abandoned the Gracchi brothers, and the Gracchi brothers ended up being fed by a female werewolf. So on that note, Zinira, I think I'm gonna change my name.
That's too funny. Mara, my name also apparently, according to some people, means flower from paradise. So we're both flowers. Yay. But my question is to you is this. You posed a question to Ibrahim earlier. Oh, sorry, Omar. Why did I say Ibrahim? Because I was thinking about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Yeah. To Omar. So I'm gonna ask you, Mara, in your heart, do you feel like Mara or Cornelia?
Oh, are you asking me? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, because I thought you said Omar, and I thought, why would you ask me?
No. Do you in your heart? Because you asked him how he feels in his heart, if he's
No.
American or Egyptian. So I want to know, when people have two names,
yeah.
I literally always have to ask, like, what do you feel? Like, who are you? Which
No,
one is
Mara,
you?
definitely Mara. Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's so since you asked, I'm sorry, but I have to mention there's in Surah Al-Baqarah, there's one point where I still don't know how to recite it. Inshallah, one day I will, like you. But there's a point where it says Mara as in once or one time or first time, whatever. And I think it's
Marra.
Marra. Yeah, yeah, but to me, so I know in Arabic it's a huge difference how you say the consonant or the vowel, but to me, more or less, it's like you kind of hear your name somehow,
Yeah.
And it's an incredible experience to hear your name in a recitation. Like it's absolutely, like, every time I hear it, I just feel like the luckiest person on earth, and I believe this is probably an experience that's very common for people who are named. after
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
beautiful people in the Quran, but it's just to me that I don't have any of those names. So, but still hearing it, it's absolutely, I feel like the entire universe has been offered to me, at my feet. So yeah, it's definitely Mara.
Oh, subhanallah, that's so beautiful. But I think you also told me that it's like Maryam's name, right? Like it's a variation of Maryam, and that's like the only woman that is named by God in the Quran, and she is also the epitome of motherhood. So I think she's definitely a good mother. Don't worry about it. You're not Cornelia, you're Mara.
Yeah, very cool.
No,
We
but
also
also
we actually I don't know, it's a gray zone for me. I don't know who to identify because culturally I'm still living in a Orthodox society. So, but we do have a national celebration of Mariam, uh, and yeah, we definitely celebrate it, and everyone who carries this name. I don't know if you have this, uh, but we celebrate it. Yeah, we also celebrate her passing. Celebrate, as in we commemorate. So we have 2 days, one on August 27th, which is her passing, and one on September 8th, which is her birth. Do you have that in the in your culture?
no, we don't. We don't even know that. I mean, we don't even know her birth. I mean, yeah. I mean, girl, we are people out here debating if we should do Maulid, if we should even celebrate Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's thing. So yeah, I don't think we even know
Yeah.
Maryam alayhi salam's. But does anyone else? I feel like maybe I should just not say this. Never mind. But yeah, it's like this thing about association with names.
Yeah, I
I don't
felt the
know.
same. I've always felt like I'm both Omar and Omar, right? And probably for most of my life, more Omar, just because school and work and stuff like that.
Your entire name is so beautiful, Barakallah Fik. It's really beautiful.
Me?
Like
What?
Ibrahim. Yeah.
Oh,
Zinira's
thank,
too, but I was talking, yeah, because you mentioned it's really beautiful.
no, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just like
You
people
guys
can't
have like
say
the
Omar,
same. You guys have the same thing in your name. Like you have mud in your ring. Both of you guys have
Mar.
like the
Yeah,
same consonants,
yeah, Marra, Marra. Um,
which means bitter, by the way. Um,
I know.
that's what
no, that's
apparently like Maryam. Literally, I think it means bitter. Like that's literally. I was
no,
like, I can't even
Mur,
believe this.
That's
No,
in
I'm
Hebrew.
serious.
No, in Hebrew
Murra,
it means bitter.
Mur,
Yeah,
Mur is bitter. Mur,
but it's the
Yeah.
Mar,
root.
No, so in
Mar,
Hebrew, but yeah.
Mar is more like passage, like to travel, like Marra, like
مرة
a,
على قرية. That's
yeah,
in
Marra.
that's in
Yeah,
Surah
it means
Al-Baqarah.
to like to pass
What?
by,
Passage?
to pass. Yeah, to pass by something is to Marra.
Yeah, relatable.
Yeah, yeah,
No, stop. She's making it dark. Stop it. I don't even know what she means, but I know she means something dark.
yeah. In Spanish, mar is ocean, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Latin, I think mar is ocean.
Yeah,
Um,
except for Latin, which I learned when I was in high school, I never really cared what the name means. I only cared it in the Middle East. I don't know why. I mean, I think I know why, but it's like it doesn't matter what happened with it in Europe, in the European space. Who cares about that?
yeah, I often meet like Muslims that are not Arab and they have Arab names, and I'm like, oh, do you know what your name means? And they're like, oh no, I have no idea. I've never cared. And I'm just like, and they say it with like, like like I really don't care. Like I don't know. I
Oh
was
my gosh, I could never. Is it just us?
I
Dang, I did not know it was just us.
No, maybe it's a, yeah, I don't know. It's not everybody, but some people are just like, oh wow, I've lived my entire life and I have no idea what my name is. It's just
But
like,
since we're at it, and I'm gonna be the brave and the awkward one to ask this because we obviously made a huge detour. Uh, so, has anyone else ever Googled their name before?
yeah, I've
First
Googled
or
my,
full name? Which one?
My name is too common, so I don't get anything interesting.
No, but like to see what pops up on Google about you.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you guys something that pops up on Google about me. Don't Google it. But basically, the Boko Haram's leader,
Yeah, I
his
saw that.
his name is Abu Zanira. So I was telling my dad, I was like, you should call yourself. Imagine you call yourself Abu Zanira because I'm like his first
Well,
Zuriya.
I
I'm his
haven't.
first child. And I was like, yeah, just don't be doing that because it's like Boko Haram's leader.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name in so long.
But yeah, so basically my name, his sorry, what? You guys know Yusuf Estes?
Yeah.
He's so funny. So the other day I met him, the other day, mashallah. Like 2 years ago I met him and like there was this huge like it was like more like a low-key conference thing going on, and one of my friends is like her dad is one of the biggest, only one of the biggest celebrity preachers in the whole world. So he was organizing it. So I was at this hotel where like everything was going on. Anyway, she was gonna get married. That's why I was there. But they were all these like, you know, ulama from all over the world were there. So I ran into Yusuf Estes and I was like, oh my god, assalamu alaikum. So then he's so funny. So then I was like, so he said, oh, what's your name? And I was like, Zanita. And then he's like, oh. And then I was like, I was named after I was named after a Sahabiya. Her name is Zunaira al Rumiya. And he was like, oh, nice. I was named after Abraham Lincoln. And I was like, what? I just assumed that maybe his like pre-conversion name was Abraham. And then he was like, yeah. And I was named after George Washington. And I was like, what? Do you guys get it?
No.
He meant after, as in he was named in
Oh.
time. He was named after them.
Oh.
Like first they were named and then he was named. And I was like, yeah, nice one.
Jail
But
joke.
I know. Sorry. Wait, what did you say? He's a really nice person. Don't say anything bad about him.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great joke.
But yeah, it's so interesting to me because one of the meanings of my name is like, I don't know, the first thing that Omar told me about, like, remember you said like Zaz to you sounds like sound, like it just like evokes the meaning of sound. And one of the meanings of Zanara is like to something, they're like small pebbles that make sound. And I just thought that was so oddly specific. I don't even know. But yeah, that's one of the meanings. And then some people say it means flower of paradise. But what my parents taught me since I was a kid was that it means keen observer, someone who really observes. And then someone told me from Turkey, like on Instagram, one of my followers, she said it means witness to the truth. And I was like, yep, that's the one I'm gonna take that one. Like observing, witnessing, you know, that kind of thing. I like that.
Yeah, I forgot what we talked about your name. I forgot what I found, but I thought there was something else. But yeah, Z has like a very like vibration-y kind of sound, like Zen is to like hum or like buzz in Arabic. Zen. All right, so we took a lot of tangents. But I just found this website, omaribrahim.com, and it's like apparently this guy is in Chicago. He's a software developer and also writes
Oh
poetry.
my god, that's why I said Ibrahim, because your last name is Ibrahim.
Yeah.
See, my somehow was not activated, but my something was activated. Yeah. Why didn't you say that? Because I called you SubhanAllah. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't. I thought you were just. Yeah, I thought you were just referring. Some people refer to me about my last name.
So what do you think? Are we rooting for this other Chicago guy who stole your name, or should we
You guys, there's
give
this
up
joke,
for his
right? That you guys
demise?
have to fight. That you have to fight. Like if someone has your name, you have to fight them.
I
And
can't
then
believe he's in
whoever wins
Chicago.
keeps the name.
I can't believe he's in Chicago too. Yeah, it's crazy. I'll have to reach out to him. He doesn't look like me, so I guess you know.
So you're good?
Yeah, I
Or
guess
you're
we're
not
good.
good.
No, I guess I'm good. He does look kind of familiar. I wonder if I've seen him. Interesting.
This is another version of you who actually pursued software developing.
It's too funny.
Yeah.
He kind of looks familiar. Does he look like what you see in the mirror?
You know what's actually
He's like,
that's actually he was actually trying to just like
Is this
show us
actually me?
his
Am
Google
I
profile.
having an existential crisis? Is this actually me?
did I come back like from the picture and you just
You
like
know,
made
there's
another
another
account?
woman with exact the same name as me.
Girl, I told you that. I read a book, and like there was
There's
this book
another
like,
one. I know about that one,
mashallah.
but there's another one living upstate, and she's a translator, like English and French, and she basically has the same qualifications as me, but she's been doing it like for the past 20, 30 years, and yeah, every time I Google the name, she pops up before me, and we have to change that. But yeah,
You have to fight. No, but for real, I was reading this poetry book, and in the poetry book, like there's like introduction, not like little bios of everybody, and there was like a Mara from Romania, and I was like, "Hey, Mara!" I sent it to Mara, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you write poetry? Is this yours?" And she was like, "Nope, that's
oh
not
my
yours."
body, that
But I
was
had to
very
put-
humbling for me, by the way,
Why?
because I was like, I wish I would have said yes, but I don't even know what publication that was.
And then I was like, "How many Maras be in Romania doing the
A
same thing?"
lot.
But yeah, so my one of my friends, her name is Samina. Actually, we shouldn't say, but the thing is, she's Pakistani, so we just say Samina. But it's actually Samina actually means fat in Arabic, if you say it that way. But Samina is her name, right? Because it means precious. Important difference. So her name is Samina, and her daughter's name is Sundus. Okay, and then this Samina, she has her best friend whose name is Sundus also. Okay, and that Sundus's mother's name is Samina. So basically, there's
Wow.
two Saminas that have daughters called Sunduses, and the Samina and the Samina and the Sundus are friends, basically.
Well, sometimes I mean, information has to be recycled. I don't know. People have to, yeah. It's we're too many to be this original.
Not me, girl. My name is Original A. I
Not
mean,
you,
have you
but
ever heard known
you're
any
you're
other
the only one
Zamira?
of the kind. No, no,
Yeah. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma
Okay,
barik.
okay. I'm very distracted and lost, so let's try and uh
Yeah,
uh
we should probably call it a day because feel silly
yeah,
too.
okay, yeah, we can do that. I was sad that Muhammad left because I wanted to kind of, so I guess we'll have to do part
Don't be
two
sad. It's not that
for
deep.
both. Yeah. Well,
We can just text in the
I
group.
wanted her I wanted her to elaborate on what she was saying about like love as a phenomenon and education,
About
marriage, institutions. It's in the chat if you didn't see it. But okay, so should we end here and do a part two next week?
Yeah.
I think I get what you're saying. Like, love is a skill, as in what Mara was saying is like, math is a skill. Like, you can just learn it later if you weren't good at it first. But she was saying, yeah, love is a skill too. Like, there are things, and I think energetically, like, even what you said, Omar, I think it is true to an extent that you're never going to be fully healed. So, in that sense, I do suppose there's like an innocence and a trueness to you that the person that loves you first or you love first gets a version of you. But at the same time, don't you feel like there are people that we meet maybe later on in life that we click with more, or that we like, that I would say fire us up more, that they like spark something in us that is very
Yeah,
familiar to us in a sense that is not, that we wouldn't have had before. And I
yeah,
mean, I'm really speaking even like platonic, like friendship wise as well. Like you can feel this. And I feel like, it's not about, it's really, I think it's a two-way street. I have this poem like love is a two-way street. And it's like, because I've seen this, um, there are people who have personality. I wouldn't say personalities, but I mean, you can call it personality, but they have something in them. I think they have certain names of Allah in them that make you, that inspire you to be more open to them, so that you experience a version of you that you haven't even experienced before. So, because we're not the same person with everybody, which is, I think, kind of the premise that we're going with by when we say that your first love is gets the
mm,
realist, or like you give it your all.
yeah,
But then, I think, I mean, that is true. We're not the same person with everybody. And so like, because I know so many of my friends will tell me, oh, this person, they'd never text back, but they'd be texting me back. Not to brag or anything, alhamdulillah. But I'm saying like, and I'm saying like, this is, I'm just talking about like, I'm not talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about like in general, like, like if you just how we label people, right? Like they say, oh, this person's really cold, but I've never experienced that person as cold, or this person never like, I don't know, takes initiative, but that's not how I've experienced them. So it's like, what is the other in you evoking in you and like inspiring you to show up as? And that can be, I think, it doesn't have to be that your first love evokes the version of you that gives them your all. It can be someone later on in life, and they can like evoke something that is more of like, I don't know, a soulmate thing. And again, I'm not just talking about romantic. I think I'm primarily talking about like friendships. Like, because if you think about it, we are, in one way, we are our purest fitra selves as children. But how many of us have the same friends that we had when we were kids? I have some, but only a few, right? So like something's not matching right now that was matching then, right? So, but that means that with these other new friends, there's more things that are matching that weren't matching back then, and that in a way that is conducive to who I am right now and who I am, not who I am, because who I actually am. Like if we go back to like the Ain Sabita, that's what the that's what the, I don't want to say theory, but that's what Ibn Arabi's theory is that each of us has an immutable essence. But then it depends. We're not always, we're not close to it all the time. But then again, if you think that your first love had the best version of you, then you should also think that your, I don't know, kindergarten best friend had the best friend version of you, right? But is that person still your best friend? Probably not.
I think maybe one way I can kind of clarify what I was trying to say was that your first love is not necessarily your greatest love, right? And I think that's kind of along the lines of what you're saying too, Zanira. But I think your first love is exceptional in a way that's different from your greatest love. I think it would be good if we and I guess because
No, now I want to, because like, look,
well,
if you think
I
about
want to
it,
I want to think about this more, but there was something that Mara said actually that I wanted to touch on, which is how like uh, how we kind of learn, like how sometimes like when we are scarred, right, when we have a bad learning experience or we have a bad love experience, sometimes I think this is the case for most people, it's difficult to get past it unless you're like tricked. you know Unless like it's kind of silly, but like unless there's like especially with learning, right, it's a little bit more salient and easy to describe with learning, but like unless you find like a mnemonic device, or you find like a poem that like or a song that puts the ideas together for you, or you just find it presented to you in a completely new way, right, it kind of completely in some way it kind of maybe erases all the previous, like it just turns up so your preconceived notion completely upside down. And I think that's one way that we kind of, yeah, I think you were Mara saying this when she was talking about like, I don't have to be a math whiz. I just have to understand like these like, couple of formulas or whatever it is. And that's kind of, I think the same thing that also happens in relationships sometimes, right? It's like, I don't have to relearn how to love, I gotta like, patch this behavior, or, you know, uh, it, find a workaround for this, like, this issue. And I think that's kind of, how I'm trying to think about it. I know I didn't articulate that very well, but it is related to, like, for example, the app. Oops, what did I just do? Yeah, the app, right? So like this kind of graph is like a mnemonic device in a way, right? It kind of like, in a way, I kind of wanted to like break through the barriers that a lot of people have had built up, to protect themselves from the shame of like feeling dumb, or feeling like they can't understand language at a high level, or that they can't develop a relationship with Arabic or the Quran or something like that. So this is one method of doing that. These Lisān Lab sessions are another method of doing that. These things have different effectiveness, just like different people have different ways of opening us up and revealing our hidden selves. But yeah, I definitely want to think about it more. But yeah, if you want to
But
prod more,
in terms of relationship, right? According to the Sufi path, I think for most, not like the Sufi path as in the book, but the Sufi like n- um way of thinking, I guess, viewpoint. I think the way that I understand it is the most important human relationship you will ever have is the one with your teacher. And the teacher is not the first relationship that you have. The teacher is like something you have to, I don't want to say suffer, but a lot of times, like they'll say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so you have to be ready for it. You know, it's not something that you're fresh out into the world, like meeting people. And then the first thing you're going to do is meet your teacher who's going to be like the most transformative relationship that you've ever had. No, it's not the first thing. And it is the greatest. So, yeah, so I think it's not,
That
and it's
sounds
almost,
true. But the teacher
yeah.
is also someone who doesn't give up on you and who sees potential in you and who is skillfully extracting that potential out of you. And this is, I don't know if you would agree, but this is a miracle if we meet people like that, if we meet people with teacher qualities or people who show that in us, like who offered that to us. It's like a miracle every time.
Yeah, but I'm saying, Mara, that, it's kind of the same thing with, like, it's not, like, you kind of have to, maybe you even have to be broken to meet the teacher, by the way, right? So it's like, because Omar is saying, and that is supposed to be the greatest love in a way, because that makes you fall in love with yourself. And it is a soulmate relationship, where soulmate means someone that you met in the previous world and you're meeting them here now. And so you recognize them. But in order for you to recognize that teacher, you need to actually go through some things like an initiation, or like you need to go through, suffering. And then you'll even like start to look for the teacher. And I think the same goes for, like, for me, like my primary relationships are like friendships. Like that's my main focus in, I don't know, just like my main value system, I guess. Did I hear Omar snickering? Did I hear someone snickering?
No,
uh,
no,
I
it
literally
was
muted myself
Oh my
because I
gosh.
have to
me.
close my alarm.
That's just my subconscious fear, I guess. Anyway, so no, but basically, I think it should be, right? It should be the teacher relationship, because that's the one that is supposed to, because the point of relationship is to be a mirror. And that's the teacher who is supposed to, the Sufi sheikh or sheikha is supposed to be your greatest mirror that makes you fall in love with Allah and to see yourself as the manifestation of Allah, that you are uniquely a manifestation of him in that specific way. And then in any other relationship, that is also done in other, to a certain different extents, in certain different, like, maybe angles at which, like, I like to think of it like a diamond, like, the light refracts at different angles and everybody's like a different angle, every relationship. And some people are not good mirrors. Some people don't mirror you properly. Some people don't, like, make you feel like you're, for example, not good enough or something. But wait, actually, I'm not going to use that example. But maybe some people, yeah, mirror back things. Actually, this hadith, right? Al mu'min mir'at al mu'min. The mu'min is the mirror of the mu'min. And so if one of you sees a fault in their brother, they should like tell them that. And some people don't. Some people will cover your, so it's like, what does it mean to be a good mirror? And the Sufi teacher shows you both your flaws and your beauty. And I think that's what any good relationship should do. But I feel like there's a soulmate aspect to every single thing, that every single, like, really transformative relationship that we have, whether it's the teacher relationship, whether it's the friendship, or whether it's romantic and marriage, all of them require, like, I think, a certain match to happen that for most people does not happen in the first time. I don't know if that's unfortunate. I don't think it's unfortunate. Maybe it's fortunate, because it's kind of, even if you think about it like a graduation thing, right? Like, in order to be given a doctorate degree, you have to go through, like, you know, so many years of studying. You can't just be given that fresh out of, like, in kindergarten, right? And that doesn't mean that you're not ready. It just means that, I mean, yeah, that actually does mean that you're not ready. And it means that you need to kind of, like, I mean, I think of everything in terms of like a relationship of receiving from Allah. Everything that is happening here is like, what am I receiving from Allah? And the image that is comes to me is the image of a container. So when I'm like fresh here, my container is open, but it's not open to holding, for example, marriage. And marriage is one of the greatest things that, you can do in this life in order to find God, because Allah, it's like one of the main purposes of God's creation is that you should find sakina in your zawj. God said we created خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا. But does that mean like if I don't know, let's say most people, yeah, but even when we're like children, we're pure and we have a fitra and we're open hearted. Does that mean like we're ready for marriage? Obviously not. So then that doesn't mean that your first thing is going to be the best thing ever. And that means that it can take your container some getting used to, some more expansion. And I think actually, yeah, I'm gonna go back to what you said, Omar. Like, I don't think that you are maybe the most open the first time, because then we only open up to many things later on in life. You're not open to a PhD at 7 years of age, right? And you're not open to a soulmate at 7 years of age. Maybe some people are. Good for them. But I think you're
Yeah,
only open. Yeah.
but some people. So the thing is that, and this is something I also should get into my head. Truth is, Zinira, that some people have different life paths than us, and for some, first time, first love can also be like the greatest, for different reasons. They might focus on something else, or I don't know. Actually, I think there's no general rule to anything, unfortunately. And it's very annoying because we need pattern recognition to navigate this life. And I think we're all in search for that. But in all honesty, there's really no rule. Some people will peak in high school, literally, while others will actually pursue a PhD. The same with anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trouble with these kind of conversations is that we end up trying to talk about general and special cases at the same time, and that doesn't work.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, because the general case might be might not even really exist in a way, right? Like maybe there is no general principle that like you're saying, Mara, that we can apply to everybody. Everyone is a special case, maybe you can say, but generalizing still helps us kind of like understand the special cases a little bit better. So it's tricky. I want to think about it a bit more, but
Wait,
um,
and can I just say, I don't know if I feel like I'm just seeing this kind of like image of like humanity as like a being, and as humanity progressed, in the beginning, humanity was not ready for God's greatest word, which is the Quran. And so then God sent, other words, which are also His word, but they're not the word that is everlasting, that is the greatest word, that is the Kalimat Allah al-Uliya, right? And it is like this graduation through like all these books and all these prophets, and all those prophets were not able to hold the Quran. That's the main thing. They're not none of them could be containers for the Quran. There's only one prophet that can be a container for the Quran. And so then everybody had to go through like a collective container, like I don't know, expansion, I guess.
Um,
And then when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes, sorry, my brother just interrupted. But yeah, and then when like I guess we kind of got, and in that which is a huge, huge compliment to us just by being the ummah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That means our container is able to be us, allows us to be his followers, his qawm. And none of their, and we can say like it's a matter of pride for us that our leader, our Nabi, our Rasul, is the greatest container of all time. Literally, he is. And Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. And then that we are his followers. Whereas the previous prophets, all of them are blessed. And all of them are containers. Again, it comes to like, this thing about prophecy. He had to reach 40 years of age in order to become, I guess, right? Like to receive that thing. And so then it's again, it goes back to the age thing as well. Like, his first love is like obviously earlier in your age. And even in Allah says in the Quran, when he reaches the age of 40, وَبَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ, right? So then there's something about the age of 40 as well, that God is saying that there is something about reaching a certain age that is like almost like your peak. And so that is not said for being, obviously, again, that's a generalization, because people be 40 years old and 50 years old and be running countries and be doing crazy, really stupid decision making, right? But I feel like there's a general trend, and that but with that being said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in this case, he is a manifestation of Allah's name al-akhir, the last, but he's also a manifestation of Allah's name al-awwal, because he's created and his light is created first before Adam alayhi salam's. So he's the first and the last prophet, and Allah is the first and the last. So he's like, yeah.
Never heard that. It's interesting. What was I just gonna say? It's totally slipped my mind. Okay, so should we reconvene and do a part 2 for Abbas here, because we didn't even look at the root at all, or should we just wait to see if we have any other thoughts? First love, greatest
Sorry
love,
for diverting the conversation.
first impressions. What's that?
I said I apologize for diverting, like taking the conversation.
Bad girl, Mara.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No. I think it's interesting.
Just kidding.
I think it's relevant. I don't really think it's like that much of a tangent. I think we're talking about hearing
Yeah.
and seeing, right? So I think talking about sense, that's kind of where we started, right? The difference in knowledge and sense, and talking about human experience in general. I mean, that's not a deviation, really. I think the one thing that maybe that we're kind of dancing around and not saying explicitly, especially in terms of like general and special cases, is that, and maybe this is a controversial statement, but I think most people don't want to know the truth. Most people are, and again, this is a generalization, but and it's even a generalization in like a specific sense, if that makes sense, right? Because like I think most people are afraid of the truth, at least certain truths, right? They're afraid of, there's like certain places in their mind, right, where there are cobwebs and places where they never go, right, because they don't want to face those realities. And I think that that's the case for the majority of people, maybe even all people, right, to some degree, are just the way Jung would put it, right, Carl Jung, in his like interpretation of or his like theories on the mind and the self and dreams, is like, and I like this metaphor, like you can't see your own back, right? So like that's why you need a guide, that's why you need a help, someone to help you interpret your dreams, or counsel you, or whatever it is, because there's just aspects of yourself that you cannot see, no matter how hard you try. You need something to reflect. So that's one aspect of it. And I think most people, to some degree, they don't want to see their back. They don't want to see the truth. They don't want to see some aspect of it. And inshallah, we are not of those people. But I think that's the harsh and grim reality, is that like the majority of mankind is not saved, right? I mean, and we don't know for sure, so maybe I shouldn't use such absolute terms, but like I think even in the Quran we find that like Allah describes the quantity of those who are on the straight path as being few, right? قُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. And those are the muqarrabun, right? Those are that passage, I think, in the Quran, Allah is talking about people who are brought near to to God during the end, in after Judgment Day. And Allah says ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ, like a small group from the firsts, and then even less from the later generations. So and it's maybe maybe it's an obvious point. That's why we didn't really mention it or touch on it. But I think it's an important point when it comes to learning, pedagogy, whatever. But
I think it's
also
so in Romanian is pedagogie, which
pedagogy.
is
Yeah, it's probably pedagogy, but it just sounds weird to me. I don't know why. Pedagogy. Okay. Like prosody, right? Like some people say prosody or yeah. Anyway, I think it's also relevant to learning, and sorry, it's relevant to learning, but it's also relevant to love too. I think, right? Because I think if you keep in mind, keep in the back of your mind, regardless of what relationship you engage yourself with, whether it's romantic or familial or professional or whatever it is, if you keep in mind the fact that most people are afraid of the truth to some degree, that should that's a piece of wisdom that should help guide you to some degree, or should at least you know make you more cautious and a little bit more aware. Yeah, maybe that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the whole first love thing. But it reminded
that's
me of
a good wrap up of everything we discussed, and it has a lot of tact.
yeah. It reminded me of one quote, and I guess this will be the last thing, unless it prompts anybody else. But it's
Unless you're
from a
movie.
controversial book. Yeah, it's from a controversial book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and she describes it's controversial for like a lot of different like economic and political reasons. But she often describes people, and she makes a great effort to do this in the book, to describe people in the general way that I just did. That most of them don't want to know the truth; they're afraid of the truth. And she uses a really beautiful metaphor, I think anyway, in describing this one character. And she says something like, danger to him was a signal to shut off his sight, to suspend his judgment and pursue an unaltered course, on the unstated premise that danger would remain unreal by the sovereign power of his wish not to see it, like a foghorn within him, blowing not to sound a warning, but to summon the fog, right? And I think that's, really apt way of describing the way the mind works sometimes, right? It's just like sometimes we're just too scared, right? And we lock ourselves up, or we lock part of ourselves up, and we don't want to look there. And the only things that will get us to look there are, they have to be very powerful or clever. That somehow remove the veils that we've placed over our own selves. Okay, that's the last thought I had.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. It's a lot of people don't like Ayn Rand, so but I thought that was, I don't know, just you reminded me of it. One of my favorite quotes, so I thought I would throw it in there. Okay, khair, inshallah. So we'll do part 2 of Al Basir, the all-seeing Basar, next time, and maybe we'll actually look at the root. Sound good? Any final thoughts?
I don't. Jazakallah khair for today's session.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
Yeah,
جزاكم الله
maybe,
خير.
I don't know. Maybe we'll be talking too much about too many things, but it's also good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, lots of tangents today, but I guess it's good to take a break then, so we can kind of.
Oh yeah, well, what are we doing? Are we doing three weeks? So is next week a break? Or
No, next week will be fine. It's just the 3rd of every month. I won't be available, so we're still
okay,
be
so
good.
you should put that in the group.
Yeah, I think I did, but I'll make sure to announce it again.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Until next time, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair.
Walaikum salam.